Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, whatever it may be, wherever you are. I'm Art Bell, and this is Coast to Coast AM, the largest program of its sort in the world. It is my pleasure and honor to be escorting you through the weekend, and it will be a weekend full of surprises. That's for sure. And I'm going to begin with one right at the top of the program. The webcam shot tonight, that's Art's webcam. You'll see it listed in the upper left-hand side of the coasttocoastam.com website. It says Art's webcam. Just click on that. If it has gone through properly, you will see a picture of Erin, that's my wife, in Hong Kong. And we were in Hong Kong the week of the 13th of September. Now, that's an interesting date for a number of reasons. Primarily, I would say, because that's when Erin got pregnant. Here's the way it went, folks. I'm going to be a daddy. Last week, literally, as I walked out of the studio after the show, this was all very early and very much a surprise. Let me go back a week prior to that. We had some suspicions, that it could or might or was hoped to be true. And so we went out and got a test, one of those pregnancy tests that you get here in the Philippines. No, you wouldn't know about those, would you? I guess the same. They're called Be Sure here. And it's a little thing where you add a little bit of urine to the test, and then you either get one line, which means you're not pregnant, or you get two lines, which means you're pregnant. Well, the week previous we had tried the test, and we had only one line, and we said, nope. And that was that. Another week went by, and nothing happened. So when I was doing my program last week, at the same time last week, on Sunday, actually, Monday here, Sunday there, I'll get that straight. She went out and purchased two more of those little kits, and lo and behold, two little lines magically appeared. And when I got off the air and showed me the two little lines, and I jumped up and down, and we all jumped up and down, and probably not a good thing to do. And so there you have it. I'm going to be a dad. And if it's a girl, her name will be, this one's definitely made in Hong Kong. There is no question about it, to be specific, either on the 12th or the 14th. So we picked the 13th as the most likely day. And it's very, very early. And she actually had a little bit of a problem, so I rushed her over to the Manila Medical Center here, and they did an ultrasound. And she's been taking it easy ever since then. But they can actually, even that early, they can show you a picture of your baby. So I have an ultrasound picture of our baby. It's amazing. Absolutely amazing. There's nothing short of, to stand there and watch a monitor and to watch life begin is the most astounding thing I think I've ever seen in my whole life. Just astounding. Astounding. There aren't words for it. So definitely made in Hong Kong. And if it's a girl, her name will be Asia. If it's a boy, we've not yet decided. But there you have it. There goes life. In more ways than one, huh? All right. We'll take a quick look at the news, and it's kind of interesting. Most of the world news tonight is kind of interesting. Dozens of Amish neighbors came out Saturday to mourn the quiet milkman who killed 5 of their young girls and wounded 5 more in a brief, unfathomable rage. Charles Carl Roberts IV, 32, was buried in his wife's family plot behind a small Methodist church a few miles from the one-room schoolhouse where he stormed Monday. Stormed it and just shot these people. And only the Amish can be that forgiving in my mind to turn out for a funeral for him. That's it goes beyond my ability to understand forgiveness, but it's amazing, I think. The House's investigation of a Page sex scandal has only one certainty. Former Republican Mark Foley will escape punishment by his peers. It is the Florida Republican sexually explicit electronic messages to teenage former male pages that have ignited what has become a pre-election firestorm. And this has all the feeling of history repeating itself. What is it about pages that make them so damned irresistible to politicians? I'll end it right there. And then this, and this one worries me because I'm a little closer than you all are. Japan warns North Korea on nuclear tests. Tensions mounted over North Korea's threat to test its first atomic bomb. This is close, folks, with shots ringing out Saturday along the border with South Korea and Japan, warning of harsh sanctions if they go nuclear, with a possible test expected as early as Sunday. My God, it is Sunday here now in this part of the world. The UN Security Council issued a stern statement Friday urging the country to abandon its nuclear ambitions and warning of unspecified consequences if the isolated communist regime does not comply. And the question is, obviously, if they let one off, if they set off a nuclear device, what should we, if anything, do about it? I really am curious what a lot of you in the U.S. think that the U.S. or anybody else, including Japan and anybody else perhaps in the Far East here, ought to do about it. But that's scary as hell. In fact, actually, I've got a second story on it here, which I guess I ought to pay a little bit of attention to. This goes back to an Ed Dames prediction, really. But North Korea is, without question, getting ready to conduct a nuclear test. The Foreign Ministry said as much in a statement. The move would bolster the country's self-defense in the face of U.S. military hostility. That's the exact words of North Korea's KCNA agency. North Korea will, in the future, conduct a nuclear test under the condition where safety is firmly guaranteed. Pyongyang has come under mounting pressure over its nuclear program. 6-nation talks on its plans have been stalled for nearly a year now, and the U.S. has imposed financial sanctions on North Korean businesses. North Korea is believed to have a handful now of nuclear weapons, but is not known, key phrase, to have tested one yet. The statement from Pyongyang said the U.S. daily increasing threat of a nuclear war and its vicious sanctions and pressure have caused a grave situation on the Korean peninsula. The ministry went on to say that under the present situation in which U.S. moves to isolate and stifle North Korea, the country can no longer remain an onlooker to the developments. So believe me, in Asia we're watching this, as I'm sure you are, very, very carefully. Spraying the bubbles from sparkling wine across the enormous gray bow of the USS H.W. Bush, the Bush family on Saturday christened the nuclear-powered aircraft carrier named after the 82-year-old former president. I know you join me in saying to our father, President Bush, "Your ship has come in," the current president said during a ceremony for the last of the Nimitz-class carriers, the CVN-77. Thousands of Iraqi troops launched a crackdown in Kirkuk on Saturday, ordering residents to stay in their houses in an effort to put down violence. It swelled in the north amid efforts to rein in bloodshed in Baghdad. Elsewhere in the north, a suicide bomber rammed a police checkpoint with an explosives-packed car that killed 14 in the town of Tal Afar. It was the deadliest attack in a day that saw 26 Iraqis killed across the country. Well, as you know, we're putting up a new wall across the southern border, at least part of it, in Mexico, or this side of Mexico. Rising from the Pacific surf and zigzagging across the border for 14 miles, Tijuana's border fence has done very little but push illegal immigrants into the Arizona desert and feed the smuggling industry since it went up in 1994. Today, as the U.S. prepares to build a high-tech barrier with, get this, 700 miles of extra fencing, motion detectors, and remote-controlled devices, smugglers are already figuring out how to beat the new security. The journalist, actually, who chronicled Russian military abuses against civilians in Chechnya, garnering awards and accolades from around the world, has been found shot to death Saturday in her apartment building. So, there you have it. You remember Star Trek, of course. The Star Trek ship has fetched a price of $500 Starfleet Captain Jean-Luc Picard commanded it, of course. Now some Trekkie owns it. A model of the Starship Enterprise, used in the pilot and title sequence of Star Trek The Next Generation, sold for, get this, $576,000 Saturday at an auction of costume sets and props from 40 years of the Star Trek sci-fi franchise. Can you imagine that? In a moment, we'll talk about yet another October surprise. Deanna in Jamestown, California says, "Hey, Art, wanted to wish you and your beloved huge congratulations to you both. I couldn't help but think about the cycle of life. Given the loss of your dearest Ramona and the deeper meaning of you now being an expectant father, with every death there is a life." Yeah, the cycle of life is really, really something to contemplate, isn't it? Let's do as we said we would do and go to the lines. Wildcard line, you are on the air. Hello.
Hi, Art. I just want to call and congratulate you. And this is a blessing from God, honey. You have helped so many people, and you've touched so many lives. And, the way this all happened, there's no coincidences in life. And this was meant to happen. And
well, I agree. It was meant to happen. And
you deserve this happiness.
Thank you.
God bless you, hon.
That's all I can say. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Take care. The cycle of life. Well, it's true, isn't it? And I've done a lot of thinking about that. So that fast blast and hit me right between the eyes. East of the Rockies, you're on the air. Hi.
Hi, Art.
Hello.
I would just want to congratulate you on your expected baby.
That's kind. Thank you.
And I was wondering about an autograph picture from you.
Well, I'm not sure how the network is handling this now. Obviously, it's a pretty long trip by mail, so I'm not sure how it would happen.
Uh-huh. I guess they contacted you by email or something?
Who's they?
The people in the States.
You can send me email, sure. artbell@mindspring.com. That's ARTBELL at mindspring, MINDSPRING.com.
I don't have a computer.
Oh. Well, you don't meet that many people these days that don't have computers.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to meet you. How's life without a computer? How do you do?
Pretty good.
What do you do? Do you go to the library, or how do you get your information?
From the radio.
You know something that's completely disappeared, sir? You get everything from the radio?
Yes.
Good Lord.
I listen to your the show. I find it fascinating.
Well, be careful about single source information. It'll warp you.
Okay.
All right, buddy. You contact the network, and we'll see what we can work out. All right?
Okay.
All right. Yeah. See you later. A little tough since we're on the other side of the world right now. Let's go to the first-time caller line and say you're on the air. Hi.
Yeah, hi, this is Allie from Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada.
All right,
and
welcome.
I just wanted to say I really enjoy your show.
Thank you.
Quite a bit, actually. I listen to it every Saturday night, and I want to say happy Thanksgiving. And I also wanted to say that you're expecting a little girl, and she's very healthy.
Well, is that a psychic revelation? Or
yes, it is.
It is? Well, I hope you're right. I'm kind of hoping for a girl, frankly.
And she is very healthy.
Well, that's good to hear.
10 fingers, 10 toes, and a very big smile.
Well, her name is going to be Asia, and it seems totally appropriate. She was made in Hong Kong.
I think that's a beautiful name, and I wish you all the best, and I truly enjoy your show.
Somebody just fast blasted me. She will come out with made in China stamped on her butt.
Happy
Thank you very much for the call.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Oh, boy. Let's go here to the wild card line and say, hello, you're on the air.
Hello, Art. How are you?
I'd
like to also congratulate you on being soon to be a father.
Thank you.
I spoke to you last month, if you remember, if you felt as comfortable in the Philippines as you did America.
In most ways, yes. I'm still, of course, as that British fellow was talking about, assimilating to the culture here, of course, but...
Okay. But my question is... I'm sorry.
That's all right. I was just going to add that the rotten, stinking letter that somebody wrote, that Filipino hate letter, of course, has made things a little difficult for me here. They tend to they tend to murder journalists a lot over here, and so it's a little uncomfortable from that perspective. Otherwise, I love it here.
But what I was going to try, is really worried about, once, they've got the family, come with the baby, that wouldn't it be more sway towards more moving back to America now after this?
I don't know. It's a consideration. It's on the table. It's something I'm thinking about, and we shall see. Who knows what the future holds. I've had a strange life full of many ups and downs and mountains and valleys, and it's been a wild one. That's all I can say.
And is there any basis for this death threat?
Well, yes. I mean, if you see, a lot of people don't know the history of this. Some jerk, according to the FBI, went into the University of California at San Diego, went to the library there, where they don't monitor, or did not at that time monitor, who used their computers. This was years ago now. And wrote this hate letter against Filipino people and signed my name to it. Now, my dearly departed wife was half Filipino, and so that probably was the motivation for whoever did it, doing it. But now that I'm here in the Philippines, of course, it's kind of dangerous.
Yeah. Well,
somebody decided to start it circulating again, no doubt, because I am here in the Philippines. So there you have it.
Well, I wish you the best of luck and hope the baby's very, very healthy there.
That's the biggest hope we have, too. Thank you, my friend, and take care. Let's go to, gee whiz, Las Vegas, Nevada, near home. Hi there.
Hey, Art, how you doing?
I'm all right, sir.
Well, I'll tell you, we miss you around here, the van, the big antenna, and all that.
Well, it's all still there.
It's funny. I've been listening to you for forever, and tonight's the first time I ever decided to call you.
Well, I'm happy to have you.
Just so happy for you. Again, my name is Tim. I'm in Las Vegas. I would like to say hello to one person who's listening in Lompoc. His name is James. James, see you soon. Want to throw that in. Art, you got to try balut.
Oh, no, I don't.
Well, I'll tell you, I was married to a Filipina, and if I have an ex-wife, she'll be from there, too. They're just wonderful, decent, kind people.
Uh-huh. And you've eaten balut?
Yes, I have.
Well, then I wouldn't kiss you either.
Well, that's okay. I'm not interested. But also the dinigawan. I sent you a fast blast earlier in an email about dinigawan. That's the pork blood soup. Now,
I did try that. Now, I had no idea what I was eating until just the other day when she said, "Oh, you didn't know you tried that."
But fantastic, isn't it?
I do recall saying, that's pretty good. And, of course, I didn't know what I was eating, so...
Oh, and then she can make you adobo and all that stuff. But
look, a lot of the food over here, and I want to be careful here. A lot of the food here is absolutely wonderful. A lot of Filipino food is simply wonderful.
Absolutely, and I've been around it 9 years. Again, I'm divorced, but I'm still very close to my ex and the kids and the family. And I can tell you, you're in a beautiful place in a beautiful part of the world, and you were missed while you were gone. It's so glad to have you back, and I'm so glad I got a chance to say hello.
Well, it is nothing short of, I'm glad you did say hello, and it's nothing short of amazing that we have the ability to actually do a radio program from one side of the world to the other. Only a company as big as Clear Channel would have the facilities and the oomph and the everything it takes to get something like that done. To be able to broadcast from one side of the world to the other is, just absolutely, even to me, just simply amazing. Going back to the first-time caller line, you're on the air. Matt, I think, from California.
Yes, Art. I was just wanting to call and talk about the North Korean situation.
Good.
And offer you a little bit of perspective. I happen to be the head of the Global Nuclear Disarmament Fund. Pardon the background noise here. So I know a little bit about the situation. The thing with the North Korean, I also was raised in Japan, by the way, near Hiroshima. So I have a very unique perspective, and I can understand your feeling of being very close there. The problem is, North Korea, India, and Pakistan, is that, the United States has not been exactly a very good leader of example in terms of non-proliferation issues, and the United Nations Non-Proliferation Treaty review process has become completely inept and dysfunctional. That's why Pakistan and India progressed into the nuclear age. And the North Korean perspective where, it's come out that we have told the leader of Pakistan that we would blow him off the face, bomb him back to the Stone Age if they didn't cooperate. And the recent comment from one of the senators saying that, North Korea can either have a future or have nuclear weapons, but not both. It's this type of rhetoric that obviously, with an isolationist country like North Korea, and an insecure leader that they have, they feel that they have no choice other than to join the nuclear weapons club.
I know. What do you think if they actually do conduct a test, or we have intelligence? I guess we do have intelligence saying they're about to. What do you think the U.S. response should be?
Well, actually, legally, the United States has no legal right to respond whatsoever.
Well, but when has that ever stopped us?
That's the problem, Art, as you have well identified. I think, however, that more scary than that is the Japanese response, that the Japanese government is trying to use this as an excuse to actually build their own nuclear weapons and to remilitarize. And I think this is a much bigger threat to the regional stability, than actually a potential U.S. response, which is quite unlikely at this point.
I don't know. I mean, you could look at it either way, sir. You could say that a nuclear Japan would destabilize the region, but how could it destabilize it any further than North Korea, one of the few remaining hardline communist countries having a nuclear weapon? Maybe Japan having nukes would stabilize the region.
Yeah, actually, unfortunately, because of the history of Japan's militarized past, it still is very, very raw with Koreans, with Taiwanese, and with Chinese, and even with, Southeast Asian countries. And so to have Japan remilitarize China wouldn't sit still for that, for one thing, and they already have probably about 450 or so nuclear weapons. And there's going to be a very big problem. It's not something that the other countries would sit still for.
How we're going to stop all this, sir, I have no idea. I mean, whether man can prevent his own demise or not, I think is very much an open question. And it's going to, the bomb is going to continue to proliferate until just about everybody finally has it. And eventually, if there's not some major white light that descends and changes all of our brains into these peaceful, wonderful people, we're doomed.
Well, you're right. But what it is, Art, is there needs to be a shift from the government being solely in charge of nuclear proliferation issues to the people having a say in this, which we have never had before. And if you look at the Global Nuclear Disarmament Fund website, we have recently signed the first treaty with Moscow by an NGO and a government, whereby public participation in dismantling nuclear weapons that should have been dismantled under the NPT treaty is actually now a reality, because it only costs $100,000 to dismantle a nuclear weapon. The average SS-24 or SSN-18 or, one of those ICBM class missiles. We've never had the ability to participate, and now all that's going to change. And until the public gets the opportunity to really have a say in this issue, you're absolutely right. It's going to continue to proliferate, and there's very little hope for humanity, like Einstein and Joseph Rotblat put in their letter to President Truman in 1945.
I think it was something about, didn't Einstein say that he had no idea how World War III would be fought, but he was certain that World War IV would be fought with sticks and stones, something like that. Wildcard Line, you're on the air. Hello.
Hey, Art, how you doing?
Just fine, sir.
That last caller, I just want to take just a little bit exception to some of that. The Japanese Prime Minister arrived in Beijing you're in a great part of the world, a lot of things happening. He arrived in Beijing about an hour ago, and it's his first overseas trip since, taking office less than 2 weeks ago, and he's there to meet with the Beijing leaders to try and, get a little thaw in these chilly relations. And where's he going on Tuesday after he leaves Beijing? To Seoul.
So,
and in both places, he's going to talk about the North Korean.
Well, I
situation.
can't blame the Japanese, sir. I mean, my God, look back at what happened in 1962 when the Russians decided they were going to put a short and medium range ballistic missiles armed with nukes in Cuba, aimed at us, 90 miles away.
Right.
So understand
Japan,
how the Japanese feel.
That's right. So I think this new leader, though, is taking the right move. And I don't think that Japan is necessarily interested in trying to create more of an arms race over there by nuclearizing itself. It may want to militarize itself, and I think we should be a little bit concerned about this new leader. He does represent a nationalist movement over there, but to say that Japan is out to have nuclear weapons, I don't think so. I believe the Japanese. I remember they're the one nation that has suffered at this, other than like people in Bikini Atoll. I mean, they understand the impact, and I don't think that that's what they're up about to backdoor way to have a reason to put nukes on their soil. But real quick before you run out of time, I just want to tell you why I called. I first started listening to you. I lived over in the part of the world you are in Guam. I lived there for about 10 years, which is only about a 4-hour flight from the Philippines.
Well, as you know, we're on the air in Guam.
I'm sure you are, and I enjoyed balutes and a lot of other Filipino delicacies because of the strong Filipino influence over there in those islands. But I wanted to know, how was the typhoon over there that passed through a week or so ago?
It was
Manila
rough,
got
buddy.
Hit?
Oh God, Manila was hit dead center, and it was one scary mama of a typhoon. Let me tell you, we're on the 19th floor of a building here, and you could actually put your hand on the window and feel it bowing in.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And, of course, trees and power lines were down everywhere. We were without power for almost 5 days here, and the cleanup is still going on. I think the last count I heard, 76 were dead. It was a very serious typhoon, sir.
Well, I'm glad that you're all right, and I just love the idea of hearing you on the air from Manila. Congratulations on what's going on in your personal life, and I work in the media, and I think Clear Channel is one of the companies that's capable of putting on shows from overseas, and I think you've broken tremendous new ground for radio, and it's important that people realize that radio is still a very viable medium, and I would love to see more international-based programs such as yours with other hosts and other
Well, I could be wrong. Thank you very much. I could be wrong, but as far as I know, never in the history of radio has a regularly scheduled, long-form talk show of any kind been done from one side of the world to the other. Now, somebody may correct me on this, and I could be wrong, but I don't think so. I think that we absolutely are breaking new ground here. Never in the history of radio has a long-form talk radio program been done on a regularly scheduled basis from one side of the world to the other. Now, if I'm wrong about that, you all let me know. Wildcard Line, you're on the air. Hi.
Hello, Art. Wow.
Hello.
Every time we hear you on the radio, there's something new and interesting going on in your life.
Yeah, I'm an open book. I don't know. I just can't keep my mouth shut. If something big is going on in my life, I share it. That's the way it is.
That's what separates you from everybody. It's not like most radio people. It's basically all business. With you, it's more like a family member on the radio.
Yeah, ever growing family.
There you go. At least you have a new use for that maid's den now.
You've got a good point. Actually, it's Aaron's office that will be sacrificed and become a baby's room, but what might eventually happen if we remain here is that the maid's room will be filled with a maid.
Aha, there you go. Now that'll give you
give you some idea of how inexpensive it is. A full-time live-in maid here is $30 or $40 American dollars a month.
Oh God! Wow, that makes. You know what? I think you've done so much on the radio. I think there's going to be a major exodus from this country to move to where you're at because the standard of living is so much better there.
Well, it's different, that's for sure. Listen, buddy, I have got to split. We're right up against it here. So you have a good night. Thank you for the call. And when we come back, we'll be talking about the psychic you. From Manila in the Philippines, where it's kind of hazy and strange this afternoon, I'm Art Bell. Lene, that's an unusual name, in Buena Vista, Colorado, hits it on the head here. Congratulations on Asia coming into your world. Also, it appears that she will probably come in the week of your next birthday, and she's absolutely right. The projected date of arrival is right on or around June 17th, 2007, which, as some of you know, is in fact my birthday, the cycle of life. Yikes. Coming up in a moment, Jeffrey Wands has hosted his own radio program in New York now for many years. He's also made many television appearances, most recently on A&E's Mediums, We See Dead People, Maury, and, of course, the Today Show. Jeffrey has come to understand that everyone has some psychic ability within them. These hidden abilities within us can enrich our lives and the lives of others. In his first book, The Psychic in You, he would like you to embark on this journey and help you to release the psychic in you. So, coming up in a moment, we will look into the psychic world with Jeffrey Wands. Stay right where you are. Well, October traditionally has always been full of surprises for all of us, hasn't it? According to the Russian astronomer Nikolai Fedorsky, now bear in mind, this may not be true, but there is this Russian astronomer named Nikolai Fedorsky, a giant comet flying at top speed, says he, is bound for us, Earth. Should the comet stay on the collision course, it may hit the planet, he says, in late October. The impact will cause devastating tsunamis, earthquakes, and avalanches, says Fedorsky. He saw the killer comet in a telescope 2 weeks ago, says he. He managed to calculate the comet's trajectory. We got in touch. Now, this is, of course, from a Russian newspaper, Pravda. We got in touch with Nikolai Fedorsky. He said, just a few people are aware of the fact that comets of various sizes fly past Earth at a very close distance, and on a regular basis, he said. Well, those comets usually pass by unnoticed. The above circumstance is not a guarantee against disaster by any means. The Tunguska meteorite landed in the wilderness of Siberia. What if it had plunged into the center of Europe or somewhere in the ocean? Well, anyway, that would certainly be a gigantic surprise. A lot of people have asked about various customs and culture here in the Philippines, and I was sent this week by a British journalist who was stationed in the Philippines. It was actually written back in 1999, but it applies equally well today. It's by Matthew Sutherland. And he says, I have now been in this country for over 6 years. I consider myself, in most respects, well assimilated here in the Philippines. However, there is one key step on the road to full assimilation, which I have yet to take, and that is to eat balut. The day any of you sees me eating balut, please call immigration and ask them to issue me a Filipino passport, because at that point there will be no turning back. Balut, for those of you still blissfully ignorant non-Pinoys out there, is a fertilized duck egg. It is commonly sold with salt in a piece of newspaper, much like English fish and chips, by street vendors, usually after dark, presumably, so that you can't see how gross it is. It's meant to be an aphrodisiac, although I cannot imagine anything more likely to dispel sexual desire than crunching on a partially formed baby duck swimming in noxious fluid. The embryo in the egg comes in varying stages of development, but basically it is not considered macho to eat one without fully discernible feathers, beak, and claws. Some say these crunchy bits are the best. Others prefer just to drink the so-called soup, the vile, pungent liquid that surrounds the aforementioned feathery fetus. Excuse me, I've got to go throw up now. I'll be back in a few moments. He comments on, of course, a lot of the food here is absolutely wonderful, but there are some things that, well, he goes on, it's weird. If it's weird food you want, I suggest you avoid the following, though. In addition to duck fetus in the half shell, items to avoid in the Philippines include pig's blood soup. Now, as well as bull's testicle soup, the strangely named soup number 5. I dread to think what numbers 1 through 4 might be, and the ubiquitous stinky shrimp paste. And it goes on and on. Filipinos are so addicted to these latter items that they will even risk arrest or deportation trying to smuggle them into countries like Australia and the United States, which wisely ban the importation of items you can smell from more than 100 paces. Now, I was told when I read this, laughing to Aaron some days ago, that I had already tried pig's blood soup. Now, I was blissfully unaware of the fact that I had tried it, and I guess I didn't listen carefully to what it was. I listened to the Filipino name and said, pretty good. So I had no idea. And then he goes on, another good thing to look at here in the Philippines, and I've noticed this right away, are the names given to people here in the Philippines. A good name is rather to be chosen than great riches, Proverbs 22:1. When I arrived in the Philippines from the UK 6 years ago, one of the first cultural differences to strike me was names. The subject has provided a continuing source of amazement and amusement ever since. The first unusual thing from an English perspective is that everyone here has a nickname. In the staid and boring United Kingdom, we have nicknames in kindergarten. But when we move into adulthood, well, we tend, I'm glad to say, to lose them. Second thing that struck me is that Philippine names for both girls and boys tend to be what we in the UK would regard as overbearingly cutesy for anyone over about 5. 55-year-old colleagues put it this way: when I come from a boy with a nickname like Blue Boy or Honey Boy, well, you'd be beaten to death at school by pre-adolescent bullies and never make it to adulthood at all. So probably would girls with names like Babes, Lovey, Precious, Peachy, Apples, and on and on. Here, however, no one bats an eyelid. Then I noticed how many people have what I have come to call doorbell names. These are nicknames that sound like, well, doorbells. There are millions of them. Bing, bong, ding, and dong are some of the more common. They can be and frequently are even used, even more doorbell-like combinations such as bing bong, ding dong, ting, ting, and so forth. Even our newly appointed chief of police has a doorbell name, Ping. None of these doorbell names exist where I come from, and hence sound unusually amusing to my untutored foreign ear. Someone once told me that one of the Bings was asked why he was called Bing and replied, because my brother is called Bong. Faultless logic. Dong, of course, is a particularly funny one for me, as whereas I come from, dong is a slang word, well, for. Repeating names was another novelty to me, having never before encountered people with names like Len Len, Let, My, Ning Ning, Ling Ling. The secretary I inherited on my arrival had an unusual one, Lek. Such names are frequently referred to and refined by using the squared symbol, as in Len 2 or My 2. This had me very confused for a while. There's a trend for parents to stick to a theme when naming their children. This can be as simple as making them all begin with the same letter, as June, Jimmy, Janice, and Joy. More imaginative are parents who shoot for more sophisticated forms of rhyme, as in B-boy, Ba-boy, Boo-boy, Bay-boy. He goes on and on. Oh, yes. And then, of course, if you're driving one of these Jeeps over here, you're going to find the name painted right across the taxi. And that's something he noticed as he came to Manila. So there's a little bit of a taste of what's strange over here. Now, when I first met Erin, when I came down here to the Philippines the first time, she chose to, for whatever purpose, go and get one of these duck eggs and eat it right in front of me. She's never done it since, and I refused to kiss her for about an hour afterward. But the balut is, actually, I think it was used on Fear Factor. When Fear Factor came here to the Philippines, I believe that balut was one of the things that sent you on your way toward earning 50,000 U.S. dollars. I think that was a prize at the time. And it just utterly offends American taste buds and sensibilities and everything else. In addition to that, there is, of course, dog. Now, I questioned her very carefully about that, and she said, no, I have not eaten dog since I was in grade school. And I said, well, thank you very much. So They do. It is indeed done over here. A dog is eaten, and I have no idea why, but she's passed that one, and but not Balut. In fact, since the pregnancy, she has said Balut 2 or 3 times. Now she sees me cringe every time that name is even mentioned. As you can, I can't even imagine beaks and claws and feathers and crunchy things. Oh my God! But yes, it's a different part of the world with different customs, and what can I say? We're kind of in a land that time forgot, as the song says. Well, all right, it's going to be a fascinating show coming up. Somebody who wrote a book called Another Door Opens. That somebody is Jeffrey Wands. He'll be talking about the psychic you, how to become a little more psychic and develop what you have naturally inside. From Manila, I'm Art Bell. Life really is quite a ride, isn't it? An absolute ride. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever it is, wherever you are, and we cover most of the time zones and most of the situations that might be involved, so I always try and include all the greetings. At any rate, we have an awful lot of lines to answer. A lot of people want to say something or another, so that coming up, open lines, as it were, in a moment. Without love, I really can't think of a really good reason for being alive. John in Bronx, New York, Jeffrey, comes up with one here that I'm sure you're going to need to deal with. He says, sweet-talking lies or the truth? The truth is, John says, that the dead are dead. And they don't know anything about what's going on, and they're not going to be made alive again until the rapture and the resurrection of the just and of the unjust. What do you say?
Well, you know what? People have their belief systems, and they're going to believe what they want to believe. But I find it to be very interesting that more and more people are having experiences where loved ones come through to them, and not just in the aspect of me doing it, but everybody has their own personal experiences. So, I mean, when you get stuff like that, it's understandable. That's his belief system, so he's entitled to his opinion.
You're absolutely right about how many people are having these experiences. And I interviewed an anesthesiologist last week. God, it was fascinating. I don't know if did you happen to catch that program?
No, I didn't. I wish I would have.
Go back if you're able to listen to programs and take a listen to that one. My God, it was interesting. He's going down really a lot of the same paths we are, not quite as psychically, but more scientifically. Now, is your psychic ability increasing as you get? How old are you now, Jeffrey?
I'm 42.
42. Do you think it's increasing as you get older or decreasing?
I think as I'm getting older, I'm more relaxed with it, so I would say to you that I probably handle it better now than I did before.
Okay. I really have always wondered. There is something magical, mystical about mirrors. By the way, I know Raymond Moody very well. I've interviewed him for years and years now. I know about the psychomania. And what is it about mirrors, Jeffrey? What is it?
I think it's especially with what Raymond does, it's the idea of, I think, making that connection, because that mirror is like the other door, and it allows us to get into that state, and maybe it's more of the unconsciousness coming up more so than anything else. But I know when it's funny because when I went down to Raymond's house and I had that experience, Raymond had told me that there were 2 other mediums that had come down that had the same experience. So it was kind of interesting. And Raymond's very science-oriented.
No, I do. All right, let's talk for a moment. It's October. It's Ghost to Ghost month. Yes, I will be doing Ghost to Ghost this year, I do believe. Now, we all know there are ghosts, or at least ghosts certainly reported again and again and again and again. What can you tell me about why a spirit chooses to inhabit frequently the residence where it passed away? Why does that happen? Why are these spirits still on Earth?
Well, I think it depends on the situation. You're saying with the residence, I find it to be when I'm called into a house, it usually is really more connected to the land than the actual house. It'll depend also with that soul and how that soul has died, or how that soul has moved on. I remember probably about 4 or 5 months ago, I had gotten a call, and a woman asked me to come to her house. They were having problems at her house, and what had happened was, before she had bought the house, there was a murder in the house, and it wasn't disclosed to her. And her 2 kids were waking up in the middle of the night telling the mother that there was a gentleman in the house with a shotgun, and he was pointing it at them. And what had happened was the gentleman that was the owner before had killed his family and killed himself.
Yes.
And that energy was lingering, and that was what was causing it. And I find it to be, especially with kids, kids are extremely open and extremely sensitive, and they're not polluted yet, in the way that we are.
Mm-hmm. In your case, you learned you were psychic at a very early age, 6, and then sort of allowed that to develop. I think with other adults, particularly those not exposed or not predisposed to be thinking about this sort of thing, we actually begin to form, as we get older, a barrier against it, don't we?
Oh, very much so, because our belief systems come in, we get cynical. It's different things that take place, and I think it's also based on some of our different life experiences. I mean, the thing that makes me crazy, it's like, people will say, how do I know? I don't believe it, I don't see it. I think more and more what science should be doing is looking at it more in a multidimensional way. They don't look at this, they look at it in one way, and you get the people that are skeptic that do this, potentially kind of studies, they only do it in one way. They forget that we live in a world that's extremely multi-dimensional.
You just hit on something that really has been fascinating me of late. Of course, a lot of theoretical physicists and others we talk to here on the air talk about multiple dimensions, 11 or more. And I'm beginning to think that science and the world that you live in, the paranormal, Jeffrey, are beginning to come together. And it seems like it's not all that far away now. Maybe it's just because I do this program, but it really does seem as though science and the paranormal have this meeting place that I can almost see now when there's going to be discovery of another a universe, a parallel universe, and it's going to begin to answer some of the questions that people like yourself generate with what you're saying. What do you think?
I agree with you. I think it's getting closer. I think it's science's responsibility to do better science. I think what happens is you get some people, and I know the Russell Targs and some of the other great people that are involved with doing the research, which is good, but you have other people that are like very one-dimensional in their thought process that are really not looking at the fact that you've got millions and millions of people all through the world, that are having experiences. And this is not like, because they're doing mushrooms or they're doing some sort of hallucinage. They're doing it more because they're actually experiencing it.
That's not to rule out hallucinogens as a path, according to some guests I've had. How do you feel about that?
I think that you don't need to be in that state for it to happen. I think that it'll come at different points. And I think with certain people, our loved ones make those connections when things are needed, and I really believe that they do affect us, and I would probably use you as an example from the standpoint that you went through all this stuff, and then you were able to put, a certain chapter of your life behind you and find happiness with somebody else, and I'm sure, and I would probably, base my professional opinion on it, that, your lovely wife that you lost had a big say in it.
Oh, I really absolutely believe that.
Well, and my belief system, nothing happens by accident.
Near-death experiences, that's been another one that has confused me. It seems as though people who have had NDEs frequently turn their lives around. I mean, if they were, doing something somewhat unsavory or whatever, after they have their NDE and a life review, that sort of thing, they turn their lives around. Well, it's always seemed, I mean, maybe that's part of their soul map, as you call it.
I would say, yeah, definitely.
Oh, you think so?
Yeah, I think that's part of it, because I think what will happen is you get these people and, they're very self-destructive and they go through something horrible. It could be, drug-related, alcohol-related, car accident, whatever it is. And I think that when they go through these near-death experiences, it definitely changes, your path. It makes you maybe recognize your path where you wouldn't have seen it before.
But they are privy then to information about the other side and how it all works that the rest of us are not, so that if we're leading a somewhat unsavory life, we will continue to do so until the day we die, and then presumably be punished for it in a way that somebody who had an NDE and corrected their life might not be.
I would say to you, probably the punishment would come from the fact that you would come back in the incarnation and have to do it all over again and go through the same aspect of it. I mean, I think that's part of the soul map from the point that they do go through these, NDEs at that point because they're supposed to really enlighten their path and, end up being where they're supposed to be.
Okay. Can you, Jeffrey, essentially do this at will? If you mentioned earlier you had a client, so obviously you have clients. You have people who come to you to speak to or to find out about a loved one who has passed on frequently. You do that kind of work.
I do that, and there's other people that come to me that would be in a business way where, they would want direction in a business sense or a life path. So it would be different things. Mm-hmm. I mean, I have a couple of therapists that I work with, so it'll vary with the need. I have a woman who's a trauma therapist who I get nothing but people that have lost, kids to suicide. And I work with her closely from the point that she helps the families get closure in one sense and deal with their grief, and then I help them with the closure of the lost person.
Okay. So many psychics, Jeffrey, seem to tell people what they want to hear. And the more you pay for it, the more you hear what you want to hear.
Well, not this one.
Not that one. All right. Well, then my question to you is this. When you get somebody sitting in front of you or that you are consulting and you look at their soul path, their soul map, if you will, and you see really something tragic, really something awful coming up, do you tell them about it?
I will tell them in a way where I wouldn't say, God forbid, if you were sitting in front of me and I would say to you, you're going to die 3 weeks from now. I will tell them in a way to tell them to look for this bump in the road, and hopefully they can prevent this bump in the road. In a lot of cases,
but that's not a bump in the road. That's more like a ravine opening up after a 9-point earthquake.
You're right.
You're going to die.
Agreed, but just as that as an example, or I've had it with other people where, I know a relationship is going to end, I will give them a heads up. There's a way of handling people, and I think with my experience in doing this, I've learned to do it in a way where you can do it soft. I mean, I've seen other people be so blunt and, do it in such a mean-spirited way that I would never do it that way.
But you must, as frequently as not, see some sort. I mean, life is full of tragedy and death and all sorts of things. It's a part of life.
I usually will give a person a heads up. I had a situation recently where I had a young woman come. She hadn't spoken to her dad in 12 years. And I nudged her about getting in contact with the father, and she was able to resolve with the father, and the father ended up dying 4 weeks later. So things like that, you can do it in a way where you nudge them or you strongly suggest that they should take care of this immediately without scaring them and saying, oh, my God, your loved one's going to pass in 2 weeks.
A nudge. I mean, for example, do you say somebody that if you look at somebody and you see the Grim Reaper ahead, do you say, listen, by the way, have you updated your will? Or
I wouldn't say it that way, or I wouldn't say, have you bought life insurance? I would say, this is a good time to get things in order, work relationships through. I would do it in a more subtle way.
Huh. That is pretty subtle for, somebody who's going to die.
Agreed, but if you were sitting in front of me and you knew you had 3 weeks to live, I've had people ask me point blank and say, it'll depend. I had people come to me that have had cancer that I know they're going to have a very short period of time, and I had one client say to me, how much time do I have? Can I do this, this, and this? So in that case, it's good. In other cases, it would just pertain to how much I think the person can handle it. The bad side of what I do is you do get some people that are not legitimate that do take advantage of people, and very much so. I actually talk about this. We have a lot of this in New York. It's the gypsy stuff, where I had this lovely, lovely little Italian woman who wanted her 40-year-old daughter married in the worst way, and she got bled for $80,000 from a gypsy. And they set it up to the point where they said to her, your daughter's going to meet somebody on the train, and they actually had somebody go to the extent who knew this person where they set up a meeting. And, this went on and on and on. And I remember this woman coming to me, and I'm like, look, you got to call so-and-so I know who's, with this particular crime unit with, NYPD, and you need to stop this because you're getting taken advantage of.
Let me ask you a very blunt question, Jeffrey. What percentage of people who do what you do, in your opinion, are frauds?
You know what? It's a tough thing because I can't answer for everybody else. I think there are a lot of talented mediums out there, and then the human effect comes in. I mean, there are certain people, it's like doctors, lawyers, you're going to get frauds. I don't know how I would answer that as far as percentages per se. I tell people probably the best thing to do is to experience, have your own experience first. Like, if you were going to come to someone like myself, have a recommendation, know somebody in your family or somebody that's a friend that would have that connection.
Mm-hmm. You seem to do a lot of personal work, in predicting people's lives or in contacting their loved ones. Jeffrey, there are a lot of people in your line of endeavor who also predict world events, and I wonder if that kind of information comes to you as well, and if so, how?
I've had it, probably a couple instances I had with plane crashes where actually in my dream state I will be on the plane that ends up crashing. It'll come that way. I remember the war, the first war with the first President Bush, and I remember dreaming about that 6 months before it happened, with seeing the desert and seeing it in that way. But usually when I get world events, it'll come more in a dream state. The one other time that I would say to you that I had a sense of something major happening would have been when John F. Kennedy Jr. died. I had this feeling at that time, the same thing with Princess Diana, where there was going to be something major in the world that was going to have a world effect.
Huh. Do you get pretty much what you want to get, Jeffrey? In other words, if you're wanting to find the loved one of a client, that's what you get. Or if you're seeking world events, do you get those? Does it work that way?
No, it doesn't. I will sit with somebody. Let's just say, for example, you wanted to contact your wife, and I was speaking to you. It may be a grandparent, it may be a grandmother first that will be the table setter that will bring her through. Initially, I usually get somebody else before that person will come through.
Do you enjoy your work, or do you find it, as in the case of the television program with Ms. Dubois, it seems as much a curse many times as a blessing?
I love what I do in the sense of the result. I have only, I would say, in the last 3-4 years, I'm more at peace with it since I've been doing national TV, and I got through getting over the bump of not being afraid of it so much. And it's amazing because people every time I do national TV, I'll get these emails from people. It'll be about, people, unsolved murders and things of that nature, and they write all these emails, and I try to pick out things that I could try to help people with. And I think that's probably the best part of what I do in regards that if I can bring that little ounce of closure to somebody, it's going to bring them a little peace.
Mm-hmm. How do you delineate between what you do and what so-called remote viewers do?
I think that they're very similar, except that in my experiences with a remote viewer, it's probably more so because they're going after a particular object or a particular thing. I think with me, I think it's a part of it. I think it's a different form of it.
Remote viewing is a very structured, in its purest form, very disciplined thing, and they try and remove all ego and all, current ego is the right word, I guess, from
yeah.
That's right, and emotions from what they do. A psychic or a medium doesn't really do that, do they?
No, and we do feel, especially I'm a dad, I have kids. When I sit with somebody who lost a kid, of course I'm going to feel that. Might be a good way to do it sometimes, but I think I would be too robotic, and I don't think I would be as effective from that point.
So, anyway, you say you're now pretty much at peace with yourself with regard to what you do, and even being in the media and doing it, you're still at peace. That must be that's, if you go on television, for example, mm-hmm. and you're required to perform on cue, that's a little rough, isn't it?
It is, but you know what? I've gotten to the point now, it's kind of funny. Every time I do something with cameras or I do something like that, we have all kinds of problems with equipment. I did a book signing today, and they had given me a cordless mic, and sure enough, I went through 3 cordless mics. It was very funny. But I'm at a point now, like, in front of the cameras, I don't even pay attention to the fact that the cameras are there. I'm good in the sense that I'm in my zone, and I'm focused on what I got to do.
Yeah,
and I'm not afraid to be wrong. I'm not God by any means. And I tell people, this is not 100% science. I can be having a bad day. It's like an athlete who, you could be.
Yeah, good to hear you say that. Another Door Opens, in fact, is your book, and we'll talk a little bit about that when we get back. It's break time. I'm Art Bell. You are indeed from the sort of foggy, misty Manila this afternoon. Jeffrey Wands is my guest, and indeed he has written a book, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. I get a lot of emails sometimes that say, "Oh, how come everybody who comes on the show has written a book, selling a book or something?" Well, that's kind of the trade-off, and it's a good trade-off that we make. Indeed, a lot of our guests have written books. In the case of Jeffrey, Another Door Opens is the name of his book, and I personally consider it to be an excellent trade-off. We give them an opportunity to promote their book a little bit, and they give us a very, very good idea of what's in it. And we'll do that in a moment. I'm 61 years old now, and so when you get to be that age, and in and around this age, you begin to do your own little life review. It's inevitable when a lot of you get to be this age. If you're that lucky, why, it'll happen to you. And I'm sure I'm talking to people who are significantly older than I am, and they certainly know what I'm talking about. Well, let me tell you, just before I bring Jeffrey back, my life has been one strange ride, really a strange ride. I never sought success. I wasn't one of those people who, I want to be a star. None of that baloney for me. I just absolutely fell in love with radio. I just fell in love with radio, and I followed that path, not to seek money or fame or any of that, just because I just loved what I was doing. However, it got after the success came, and I began doing very well. A series, as you know, those of you who have followed my life, there's been a series of very large, giant successes. I mean, it couldn't get any better. A syndicated radio program that still exists, 15 going on 20 years later. Several books that I've written, one that was, 2 that were on bestseller lists, one that was turned into a movie. I mean, just, one gigantic, wonderful thing after another, but interspersed in the middle of all that were these incredible tragedies that have occurred in my life, and I won't detail those. Most of you know what a lot of them have been, and just terrible tragedy. And it actually got to the point, for both Ramona and myself, that when things got going too good, too well, if you will, we just got to the point where we waited for the other shoe to drop, knowing inevitably that the other shoe was going to drop. Jeffrey, welcome back. Does that have a ring to it?
Oh, absolutely.
It's
absolutely.
The truth.
It's proof in the pudding, as I always say, from the point of the fact that, yes, you went through these terrible things, okay, but I definitely, and I talk to this with people, I find it to be when people do move on, and you went through a terrible thing in losing your wife, they have an effect on us in the sense that they direct us from where they've gone, where your wife, was making sure that you got another part of your life back. And
it's not just that. I mean, there was a series, Jeffrey, of on the one hand, just wonderful things followed by absolutely tragic things. And something happened to my son. A lot of people are asking about that. I do have a son by a previous marriage, and I'm not going to talk about that because it's a very tragic situation. But anyway, he's with his mom, and I just don't have any more to say about that at the moment. But a lot of tragedy involved there, and other aspects of my life, just as far down as you can go and as far up as you can go, Jeffrey. And do the two walk hand in hand, the ups and the downs?
There is no doubt in my mind in my experiences that they do, but we, in the soul capacity, have that ability to overcome, and we end up doing it. So when you look at everything that you've been through, and you look at the journey that you've taken, now you've come to a different point where you're coming to a different point of peacefulness.
That's true.
Which it is.
And happiness. And so, but again, I worry about this cyclic repeating of, it's good and then it kaboom.
Well, we do have a tendency sometimes to put that energy out because it's the fear, and it's also the fact that, you're a public figure and you have to look at it. It was interesting because I had heard one of the callers earlier saying about the fact that with you on the radio, it's like listening to family. And in essence, that's what you do because you're healing a lot of people by what you do.
Well, after you've been on the air for a couple of decades or so, it is like talking to family, of course. And, a lot of people now will call me up and say things like, I've been listening to you since I was a baby. How happy am I to hear that? It really makes you feel old, which I am. So anyway, all right. So you actually hear from people on the other side. When you do that, Jeffrey, do you more times than not see them, or do you more times than not get a mental message?
It's a mixture. They usually will give me something I can relate to. I'll give you a perfect example. Here in New York, about 2 weeks ago, we did a breast cancer fundraiser. The station that I'm at, we're very big into raising money for breast cancer since we have one of the highest incidents in the United States in the area that I live. And it was kind of interesting. I'm doing an audience of 500 people, and I'm out in the audience, and all of a sudden, I hear the Honeymooners theme in my head. And I'm saying to myself, does that mean I have Jackie Gleason coming through? And I go up to this gentleman, and I stand right in front of him, and it was because of the fact he was a bus driver, and his dad was a bus driver. And they were using it in that way so I would identify with what this gentleman did, because his dad was using it to come through in that way.
How do you identify, particularly when you're not seeing a dead person, how do you identify the fact that you are, in fact, getting some message from the afterlife as opposed to just, we all have random thoughts and things that occur to us, coincidences, all this that goes through our brain. How do you know when you're getting something from the other side versus just something, random neurons firing?
In my experiences, when I've done stuff, they'll be very specific. They'll say, this is so-and-so, he passed this way. They'll say, who they're with, the different people that come through in that way. And they're pretty specific usually. I mean, probably a good example when you were talking before about like a crime scene, and when you're talking about how psychics, do stuff with crimes or, murders and things like that. What I do periodically is I do the Maury show. And when I do the Maury show, we do stuff on missing kids, and they will take me to the area where the child disappeared. Right. And I'm able to kind of retrace where that child, was taken or abducted or murdered, God forbid. And I'm able to do that because it's a lingering energy, it's a residual energy. And in a lot of cases, if the person has been murdered, that soul is still going to be around.
Okay, well, that's kind of where my next question was going. You said a lingering energy.
Yes.
Jeffrey, in your opinion, is what you receive from the other side contemporary information? In other words, let's see, how am I trying to put this? There's a certain line of thinking out there that what we think we receive from the other side is sort of like that giant tape loop, the residual something or another that's left from somebody who has passed away.
Well, I would call it the consciousness.
Fine. Let's go with consciousness. Do you think you're actually receiving active consciousness or just sort of, a residual of what's left?
I think some cases you will get residual, but in most cases, because in my experiences the soul continues its journey, it would be very much so that you're getting a continual connection.
Huh. So you think it's contemporary, current, real, conscious information from the other side?
Oh, very much so, because I've had things come through where somebody will say to me, the perfect example of this is recently, I had a woman that her dad had passed away and she was trying to get pregnant, and during the session he came through and said, you're going to be pregnant in 3 weeks, and she was. So,
Jeffrey, what everybody would want to know the answer to this one, and that is, what do you know of the nature of the other side?
Well, in my experiences, I'll give you an interesting thing. I got a chance to go down to see Dr. Raymond Moody, and I got a chance to go into his psychomantium.
Uh-huh.
And I had a really profound experience when I was down there. I actually went out of my body, and I kind of did like like a near-death experience when I was there, and he was telling me afterwards, and if you've ever gotten the opportunity to sit with him, he goes through a whole psychological profile. He'll sit with you for a good 2.5 hours, ask you all these questions, make sure that you're not on any kind of drug or any kind of hallucinant or anything like that, and he prepares you mentally. And I remember going in the room, and if people are not familiar with the psychomantium, it goes all the way back to ancient Greece, and it's real interesting. And I remember going through that process, and when I was going through that process, of course, you stand in front of the mirror, you go into the mirror at one point. I could actually feel myself coming out of my body, going into the mirror, and kind of walking down a tunnel. And as I was walking down this tunnel, I could see all these faces, and there were some faces of clients that had passed away, some were relatives, all different people. And I remember it was that feeling, when you come out on a spring day and that the sun hits you for the first time?
Sure.
That's what it felt like. And I remember going, and all of a sudden I got to a point, I got to a bright light, and they're like, you went too far. And then I remember after that, Raymond coming back in the room, and, it was like I bounced back, but it was like a very profound feeling. But in my experiences with going through that and seeing what I deal with in an everyday life, I think there's different levels of souls in the spirit world, and that's where we get the idea of ghosts. That's where we get the idea of good spirits, bad spirits, spirits that are, around that haven't really grown or haven't really let go. And that's where I think we get the whole good and evil experience.
All right, let me try this question again. I'm really quite curious, and I know everybody is, what it's like on the other side. Have you had any hints, any discussions with those on the other side? Have they actually described to you the environment in which they're in?
Well, in one experience that I had, they described to me that it was like a field, and in that field, there was sun and there were other people, but they weren't really in the physical body. They were in like a conscious state, and they kind of described it as a parallel universe. That would be the way I would describe it. It was like, would us be going from here to beyond our universe? That would be the way that they were kind of describing it.
Okay, in another universe. But are they in a place that we can relate to? I mean, are there... You said a field. Are there homes? Are there cities? Are they conducting a life like the life they had here?
I would say from what I was experiencing and the way they were coming through, the consciousness part was going on. I don't know that I would say there was houses or Bloomingdale's or Macy's and shopping and everything like that, but they were still very much connected to their loved ones here, where they were playing a role or trying to play a role to make sure that those souls got where they were supposed to be.
I hope there's soul radio.
I'll let you know.
Well, maybe I'll let you know, buddy. Okay, well, all right, on to this. And it's an extremely interesting question, and that is, what happens with animals when they pass? Do animals have souls, in your opinion?
Well, in my experiences, when I was writing the second book, our beloved golden retriever passed away. And it was kind of interesting because I actually grieved more over her, probably more so than out of anyone that I've lost in my lifetime. And even dealing with death and every day. And I remember against my own better wishes at the time, I had a dream about 3 nights before we were going to take her in for surgery. And in the dream, one of the spirits had come through and said, don't take her. She's going to die no matter what. And sure enough, she did. And I remember 2 days afterwards, I was, in my room upstairs, and my wife was sleeping next to me, and I was awoken by this breath, and I'm like, oh my God, I got to take the dog out. And it was the dog actually coming to visit.
Yeah. And here's another question, be it animal or human, Jeffrey, after the passing, is there a kind of a window of opportunity that is relatively short, days or even a couple of 3 weeks, where visitation from the other side is more possible or more probable than it is later on?
All right, well, I'll give you 2 examples with that. I had a lot of the families from 9/11. The experiences I had, they were getting visitations within 6 days of the passing. Usually, in my experiences, we're talking about something within 30 days, usually, where a person will get a message. Probably a classic example of that would be a dream visitation, where they will come in the dream, say goodbye. They may touch you. They may, do a lot of different things, but that's usually in that time frame. That's been my experiences.
So it would seem. But, I mean, on the one hand, if all of this is true, it's completely understandable that it might be very quickly that it would occur. If it's not true, Jeffrey, then it would also be understandable that it would be quite quickly, because, of course, we are in severe mourning. I mean, there's nothing else on your mind, whether it be an animal or a person, really. And so you can imagine that if all this were not real, our brains would still concoct it fairly quickly after the passing.
Oh, without a doubt. But I also find it, which is what I deal with a lot, is that we go through different levels of grief, which you know and everybody knows. And in some cases, because the death, usually we make the death about us and not about the person that passed on, we have a tendency to kind of hang that person up a little bit because we're so angry. And probably a good example of that is recently I had these three ladies that came to me. One was a doctor. She was a psychiatrist. The other one was a lawyer. And the other one was, she worked on the, I guess it's like in the operating room where she ran the machine, you know, when they do open heart surgery.
Oh, yes.
Okay. I don't know the exact term, but they had their mother, and their mother was in hospice, and she was dying of liver cancer. They were all from different parts of the country. They all came into town at one time. The mother was in like the last stage, you know, stage 4 of really bad liver cancer. And they come in, and they're in about 4 days. And the 4th day, they all decide to go out to dinner because the mother's like, "Go ahead, I'm feeling okay. Don't worry about it." They go out to dinner, and of course, what happens? The mother passes.
Mm-hmm.
So I see them probably 3-4 weeks afterwards. They're angry. Why did she pass? And I'm like, you guys are missing the point. Like, you got together. That's what she wanted. It allowed her to move on. That's what she was supposed to do. That was part of her journey.
Any idea, Jeffrey, once you pass, how long it is before another incarnation occurs to you? Or is it so far out of any time reference we have that cannot be answered?
I would say to you, I've had 2 instances of experiences with clients where they had people in their family reincarnate very quickly. I remember also seeing a thing, if I'm not mistaken, ABC had a thing about a little boy who supposedly was on a ship during World War II and had a connection to the ship because he was a flyer on the ship and he was able to trace it back. And I don't think he was more than 8 or 9 years old. But I would say in the majority of the things I've come across, most of these incarnations are more out of our time frame.
Out of our time frame. So
yeah, meaning in our lifetime.
That's right. So it could be hundreds of years, thousands of years?
I would say probably the hundreds would be probably realistic.
Hundreds of years.
In my experiences. I'm not claiming to be an expert, on that. So
okay, going back to animals for just very quickly. I've had cats now for years and years and years and years, very, very close to cats. I have inside cats only. I am convinced, Jeffrey, absolutely beyond any shadow of a doubt, that if we as human beings have souls, and I know that the Bible doesn't necessarily agree with this, but animals have souls too. I look at them, you look at their little eyes, you watch their behavior, they have jealousy, happiness, sadness. They have virtually every emotion that a human being has. You can see in a cat if you live with it 24 hours a day. I absolutely, totally guarantee it. So if we have souls, they have souls.
Oh, without a doubt. I totally agree with you. Plus, the great part of it is that the majority of animals don't have the issues or the nonsense that we have. They're unconditional love. They're giving it to you, because unconditionally they love you.
And that may be, Jeffrey, why we mourn them so tremendously when we go. We can't review any of their bad traits because they really didn't have any.
No, it's an unconditional love more so than anything else. Plus, I find it to be the cats are very psychic. I find it to be dogs are very psychic. I remember our other, golden. I have a new one now, but my one that passed away. I would have instances where I would come home and I would be, sitting in my living room and she would be sitting next to me and I would watch a person come through the house who's not living and the dog would totally react to it.
Really?
Yeah, and I mean cats
really
too.
Yes, absolutely. Cats see all kinds of things that we don't see, Jeffrey. All right, hold tight. We're here at the top of the hour. Jeffrey Wands is my guest, and as the saying goes, he sees dead people. From Manila in the Philippines, where there's a kind of a strange fog or a haze surrounding the city right now, Nothing nuclear, I hope. I'm Art Bell. It is. Possible breaking news here in the Philippines. Rachel in Tucson says, Dateline Manila, Philippines. I've got to hear from this about this from Tucson. About 30 communist guerrillas on Sunday, that would indeed be today here, attacked an international airport under construction in the central Philippines using bombs to destroy equipment and seizing guns from the guards. If any of you have any update on that, I would certainly appreciate it. I don't know what airport they're talking about there, but I am very curious. So the communists on the move here in the Philippines. Jeffrey Wands is my guest. He sees dead people, and we'll be right back. All right, the news I gave you apparently is getting confirmed. About 10 fast blasts here. About 30 communist guerrillas have indeed attacked a Japanese-funded international airport being built in the central Philippines. And I'll just have to update you from there. Once again, Jeffrey Wands, your book is Another Door Opens, Jeffrey. Why that title?
I just thought it was very apropos from the point of what I deal with every day, and it's the understanding that I try to tell people death is a door. And when you open that door, it's a whole different experience.
Mm-hmm. What did you try to do in the book? I mean, what was the point of the book?
I think the main point of the book is I put some experiences that I had with death. I used actually some clients that I met with that we interviewed. And it was interesting because I have one story in the book. It was a husband and wife, and, men are normally skeptical. And they had lost a child, and they were kind of blown away by the experience. They ended up bringing their daughter, who was young at the time, and it's just part of the healing process that's in there. And then the other part of the book that I talk about is my experiences working with therapists and their perspective of what I do and the importance of the whole healing process of death and the different stages of what we go through in that healing process. And then I also talk about the idea of dreams. And it's interesting, I always tell people if you ever have a dream where you're in a snowstorm or a blizzard, make sure you go out and buy a lotto ticket. Because I actually had one of the lotto winners that had that dream, and her dead father-in-law gave her the winning numbers.
Have you ever taken the journey of trying to find out about your own future?
I ask periodically for things, and it's interesting, before I wrote my first book, and I did my second book, and TV and radio, they had come to me one night in a dream and said to me that you're going to be doing media, and I was laughing at the time, and I had no interest in doing it. I was very happy with just having my clientele and just leaving it the way it was, and I think that's where I got a glimpse, and also getting a glimpse of me having 2 sons and my wife.
That's quite a bit. Have you ever attempted to look even further ahead to see where your life is going, to see where even perhaps your life ends?
I've gotten feelings. I mean, I've had this conversation with my wife, and my wife gets extremely upset with me about, when it would be my time to go and, how I'd want to go. And, I kind of try to hint with her sometimes that I know that I'm going to be going at a certain point. And, she gets extremely upset like anybody's wife would.
Indeed. A few weeks ago, I did a very important program on the subject of suicide, Jeffrey, taking taking your own life. What can you tell me about that?
Well, in my experiences, I have one therapist that I work with. It's all kids' suicides. I would say to you that a good 94% of those suicides that I deal with are people that are actually, do have mental illness, that are taken into a place where they just lose it. And then you come across those 6% that are the ones that do it out of spite, or they do it out of anger at that particular time. But, a lot of people ask me, like, do you still get to heaven if you kill oneself?
Yes.
Do you still get across? And I found it to be the ones that have gone through the, I would say the mental trauma, where it's a mental condition, or it's, schizophrenia or manic depression, or, it could be a medication that triggered it. They seem to come through much stronger than the other 6% that are kind of still caught up in that anger.
Do you think that you need to be mentally abnormal to take your own life, or do you think that there can be rational decisions made to take your own life, and if so, what's the result of that?
Well, I'll give you a perfect example. I've had a couple of people that have come to me that have had family members that, went from ALS.
Yes.
And, the Lou Gehrig's disease. And in two of those situations, those people killed themselves because of the fact that they didn't want the end result of that terrible disease.
Is there any? Can you give? Right. No, that's. I agree. That may be rational, Jeffrey.
I mean, not that I'm encouraging suicide by any means.
No. My question is, with regard to the other side, or whatever you know about the other side, what would be the path on the other side for somebody who had done that?
The experiences I've had where I've sat with people, they've come through right away in that element. They understand. They made that choice to kind of make it easier on their family. One did it because of financial reasons. One did it because of the pain factor. All different things, but they came across. But I mean, I wouldn't want to be like, saying to people out there that we're going to form the Hemlock Society and encourage suicide. So
no, of course not. I just, in other words, you're saying those people cross in much.
Absolutely. They get across, they get settled, they understand cognitively in a way what they've done, why they've done it.
Is there some sort of karmic price to pay for that?
I got to believe that there is, based on that experience. Granted, the souls that I've been dealing with haven't reincarnated yet, but I would be inclined to believe that you would pick up some residual karma in the process.
Well, I wonder if in that case reincarnation would be considered a good thing or a bad thing.
I guess it would probably pertain to how you would come in. But I mean, I remember this one in particular, this woman was very diligent and very deliberate about doing it. They had gotten to the point where they exhausted, tremendous amount of financial resources. The family was going to lose the house, and she just decided that it was time. She didn't want to put her family through anything more.
Well, I know what the traditional religious view of that is, and I somehow, in my mind, I just can't think of a God that is vengeful. I mean, if in the case you just cited, for example, that almost all the financial resources are gone, the person's in great pain, so forth and so on, they take their own life, I just can't, in the world that I walk in and I understand, I cannot imagine that person being punished in some terrible way for what they've done.
I would be inclined to believe that too. I mean, I haven't seen it from my experiences with the clients I've dealt with. Not that I would encourage people to do that, but most definitely I could probably count 4 instances, and they came through in a very good way. They were peaceful. They were happy where they were. They had found, a sense of contentment.
Okay. Where do you plan to go from here, Jeffrey? I mean, are you going to just sort of be happy and satisfied with what you've done thus far, continue to have clients?
I think probably the thing I would like to do maybe more in time would be to teach and to get people to be more aware of their own abilities. That probably would be one of the things that I would like to do. I mean, I'm a big radio fan. I had to do a show in New York, not to the degree of what you're doing, but, I do a weekly show. Of course, in my situation, we play music because it's an adult contemporary format. But, I would say probably I love doing radio. That would be something that I would, want to continue to do.
Mm-hmm. There is no better way to communicate. Television, of course, requires pictures and visual support for whatever is being done, where, of course, in radio you can kind of create a mental picture that just, television actually takes away from in many instances. So radio is a wonderful medium in every way I can think of. Okay. I'll tell you what, shortly we will begin to take calls and I'm sure a million people are going to want to talk to you. One thing I would like to stay away from, though, Jeffrey, here on the radio,
sure,
is people to call up to get readings from you. I don't want to do that. I'm not going to allow that to occur.
No problem.
Simply because it satisfies the one person who calls, but is a tremendous kind of bore to the rest of the audience. So I would hope that the people that would call with general questions about psychic ability, about the other side, about talking to people on the other side, that kind of thing. That's what I'm looking for, audience, if you can hear me, not individual readings. That's sort of a trap that I think that a lot of people in radio fall into. Of course, if you do individual readings, the phones light up like a Christmas tree, but it's just a trap that talk show hosts fall into. So what that they light up? It's just going to bore the hell out of the rest of the audience. So I want to stay away from that, folks. So don't ask for specific readings, please, but rather generally kind of interview Jeffrey in the way I have been, if that's okay with you, Jeffrey.
Oh, absolutely. It's my honor to share my knowledge. It would be great.
All right. Is what you do, Jeffrey, hereditary? Do you believe it's hereditary? In other words, was your mom or your father in some way psychic?
I had on my mom's side, my grandmother went blind at a certain age, and I definitely remember, my mom's mom being extremely in tune and having the ability to hear your voice and to describe what you looked like. So I would say yes, part of it is hereditary, but I think that we all have it. So I wouldn't say to you that it just has to be in families.
You think we all have it?
Oh, without doubt.
Perhaps we do, but as I mentioned earlier, as many of us grow older that don't look into this sort of topic, we build a wall against it. So are there people who are psychically thick as bricks?
Oh, absolutely. I call them stubborn people.
Stubborn people?
Yeah, they're definitely stubborn. They definitely have their own aspects. No matter what you do, that's probably the worst part of my job. I call it, it's pulling a rabbit out of your hat. They want you to do the smoke and mirrors thing. Mm-hmm. And, you could give them, the license plate of the car. And I laugh. The thing that I get all the time from people is, oh, you could have Googled me. You could have get all this information. If I had time to Google everybody, it would be crazy. So, but you do get that. So.
I'm sure you do get that. I'm sure you get a lot of people who are just thinking that you're doing this for, and that's something to ask about. Actually, you're doing this for a living, right?
Yes, I am.
So you charge people to do what you do.
Yes, I do.
And I'm sure that alone makes people skeptical about what you do.
Yes, but when I do the groups and I do the things that I'm doing from that standpoint, like I did this thing 2 weeks ago for breast cancer, I wasn't getting paid for it. I did a large group. We had 500 people. I mean, I'm big about giving back, so I can't say that all the things I do, when I do the radio show, even though I know you were talking about not liking the idea of the readings and the whole bit. I mean, when I do the readings and stuff like that, I'm not getting paid for the radio show.
Sure.
I do it because I love radio.
Oh, so do I. But again, as I mentioned, that is kind of a trap that you fall into.
Agreed, but unfortunately, people do like it. And
I know. I'm well aware of it. I mean, you're only satisfying one person, and we have a giant audience out there that's interested in this sort of general topic. So let's give it a try. Let's see how we do. Here on the first-time caller line, we've got somebody or another for Jeffrey Wands. You're on the air.
Good day. How's it going?
It's going just fine, sir.
I was going to ask what he thought about 2012 and all the things leading up to that.
All right, good. I'm glad you did. We've been a lot of speculation, Jeffrey. I know this is not necessarily your forte, but 2012, of course, is the end of the Mayan calendar, and many people want to know whether it's the end of everything else.
Well, I mean, I would say to you, I haven't had any indication of that, so I wouldn't go out on the limb tonight and say to you that I'm 100% convinced in that time frame. I mean, I know we're constantly being tested in the world, and I'm sure you were talking about North Korea and the whole idea of the nuclear stuff, but I'm not inclined to believe that we're not going to be here in 2012.
Is there anything at all as you look out ahead of all of us, Jeffrey, if you ever do that, if you ever try to simply look out ahead, you don't see any sudden darkness or a sudden wall or inability to see past a certain time, as in the whole world ending, do you?
Not yet so far. I will definitely send you an email if I get to that point.
Okay. First, make that wildcard line. You're on the air with Jeffrey Wands. Hi. Hello? Going once. Oh, for some reason, I guess I didn't push the button. Let's try it now. Wildcard line, there you are. You're on the air now.
Hi, Art.
Hi.
Hi, how are you? This is so strange. I knew I would get through tonight for some reason. I've tried so many times, but something just told me I'd get through tonight. Jeff, it's really a pleasure to hear you. I have a few questions. First question is, my mom passed about 4 years ago, and I notice I'm picking up a few of her traits. Just to give you, for instance, she used to grunt a lot, like like that. It used to annoy me. I find myself doing it now. And she used to cut out coupons obsessively, and I'm finding myself doing that now, and it drives me nuts. And is that something unusual? Do you find that?
I don't think it's unusual. I mean, I find it to be the departed find a way to get across, and maybe it's your mom's way of being cute in her own way and letting you know that she's there, and that's why she's doing what she's doing. You know, so it's not unusual. I mean, I've had many different forms of contacts. I've had clients who've gotten, their departed people up on their answering machine, which are EVPs. We've done other stuff where in pictures, we've actually gotten spirits up in pictures. So,
there, you just hit on something I really want to talk to you about, Jeffrey.
Sure.
I have EVP. Mm-hmm. I've of course had people who do EVPs. It's a non-profit group up in Utah, and my God, I need them back on the air again here shortly. EVPs are probably the single most convincing piece of evidence to me personally, Jeffrey. I mean, I have looked at this so carefully, and I just can't find a way to knock it down. I can't find a way to shoot holes in it, Jeffrey. What do you think of EVPs?
Well, I'll give you a good example. We did a Maury show that coincided with the release of the movie White Noise with Michael Keaton, and we had some people on that on the show that actually, one woman in particular had gotten EVPs from her daughter that was killed in a car accident. And I've done some stuff with a friend of mine where we've gotten EVPs on a digital recorder in a cemetery, where we've actually gotten voices that have said, get out, and you can hear them clearly. So I am a firm believer, if I can hear them, why can't they come up on tape recorders?
Absolutely. By the way, folks, it's electronic voice phenomena, and it's people who are able to record either digitally or on tape the voice of those on the other side. And I really am a believer in this, and I'm not exactly sure all the time what we're getting. I find, Jeffrey, that a lot of the EVPs that I've heard, a disturbing percentage of them, number one, are children, and number two, a disturbing percentage of them are disturbing.
Yeah, because I think that's where we get into what we talked about earlier, the idea of the good spirits and the bad spirits. You are going to, in some cases, those EVPs are more lower form energy, which are, basically spirits that haven't moved on. But in other cases, you will get some really good EVPs where, there are departed family members that just want to come through and let you know that they're there.
Well, why are so many so damn scary? Like, it's dark, it's cold in here. Get the hell out. The typical Halloween scare the hell out of you kind of message.
I think in those cases what happens is what I was saying earlier about the idea of the bad spirits. You're going to get some of these souls that are either poltergeists or souls that are kind of lingering around that are still carrying a lot of the anger that they had in their life.
Well, that's kind of where I was going. Do you then believe that when you get to the other side, Jeffrey, the personality traits you had, if you were a rotten SOB on this side, you're still likely going to be a rotten SOB on the other side?
You do carry that over. I mean, it drives me crazy when I see other psychics that talk about the fact that, the afterlife, we're all holding hands. And we're singing Kumbaya, and I don't think that's the case. I mean, that's the evolution of the soul, and it's the process of the soul, and you're going to get some negative energy that does linger because we have good and evil in the world.
All right, then. It absolutely makes sense. Jeffrey Wands is my guest. We're at the top of the hour. The phone lines are absolutely going berserk, as you might imagine they are. Once again, my little caveat for talking with Jeffrey, please do not ask for a personal reading, but rather keep your questions or your inquiries in the general category, which will be of interest to all. From Manila in the Philippines, with a strange haze over the city, I'm Art Bell. My guest is Jeffrey Wands. He is a psychic. All I ask is that you keep your questions general about the world of psychic ability, and he certainly has it, rather than doing specific readings. Somebody just sent me an email, and by the way, you can do that, of course. My email address is artbell@mindspring.com. Actually, two of them, artbell, ARTBELL at AOL.com, or artbell@mindspring.com. Somebody just sent me an email. Marine scientists report massive dead zones, rising tides of untreated sewage, plastic debris, seriously threatening marine life and habitat around the globe. Now, dead zones can encompass areas of the ocean 100,000 square kilometers in size, where nothing lives because there's no oxygen left in the water. Nitrogen pollution, mainly from farm fertilizers, sewage, other things that we don't understand, produce blooms of algae that absorb all oxygen in the water. These really are dead zones. Nothing lives, nothing in our oceans. Now, many people believe that we originally came from the oceans, and if we get to a point where there's nothing left in the oceans, where they are dead, then what are our expectations? And that's not even to mention the rest of what's going on in the world right now. We'll cover all that and get to your questions for Jeffrey Wands in a moment. Jeffrey, not even considering the proliferation of nuclear weapons and what's going on right now in North Korea and elsewhere, but looking at the dead zones in the ocean, looking at what's going on in the world right now with respect to ocean currents, which may end up freezing the European parts of the European continent, looking at our air or the lack of good breathable air and a lot of other problems on the planet right now. And I know this is asking for a psychic revelation of the largest sort, but it really does look like we're on the road to more or less destroying ourselves, Jeffrey. I wonder if you have any thoughts about all that at all.
You know, especially when you have kids, I worry about the fact that the kids are going to have a place to survive in, down the road. But I haven't been given any indication yet that we're not going to have a place to exist. So I got to believe from that standpoint there's still something in the bigger plan.
Okay, let's hope. Wildcard line, you are on the air with Jeffrey Wands. Hi.
Hi, Art. Recent discovery with your program. It's always great night after night. And
thank you.
Jeffrey, no problem. And Jeffrey, I have a question for you. I use a candle visioning process where I stare at a candle for a few moments, and I have the light to memory in the rods of the eye. And in that field, I transition in colors from bright yellow to orange, then to blue. And when I hit the blue stage, I see geometric linear patterns and faces, lots and lots of faces. And a specific example here that's incredible is in '94, when I was living in Phoenix, I used the process, saw the word Sama spelled out in blue letters, and then saw a bunch of faces. The next day I was riding out of town on my bicycle. I saw three figures on a hill with a truck, and when I arrived adjacent to these persons, I glanced to my right, saw a young cowboy looking at me at the same instant, and it was like total realization, just a total consciousness between the two of us. At a later point, I discovered that Nostradamus used a candle or a flame to create or cause or experience his vision. So what I'm wondering is, who am I experiencing as to the people in this process?
Well, I think what you're doing in essence, and I actually talk about an exercise in my first book about doing the whole candle work in regards to the fact that you're tapping into a consciousness, which is probably what you're seeing with those people are actually people from the spirit world.
Let me follow up, Jeffrey. Whether it's a candle or whether it's mirrors and a psychomantium or some other process that a person concocts, Jeffrey, does it really matter, or is it just the intent of the person to find a psychic path?
I think it doesn't matter per se as much. It just helps us get on the path, and I think it enhances it in the way that it gets us to be more aware of it.
Okay, fair enough. First-time caller line from Florida. I think you're on the air with Jeffrey Wands.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
Okay.
My name's Joan. I'm from Cape Coral, Florida. I'm psychic, clairvoyant, clairaudient. I've had quite a number of experiences, and this has been a great program. I really love you, Art. You're great. Programs have just been wonderful lately that I've been listening to. And I did have a question. I've had this gift since I was, quite small, a small child, and then it was dormant for some time in my teenage years. And Jeffrey, I don't know if you've ever had a dormant time like that, and then it came back after the birth of my daughter. And the psychic awareness was really great, and I would start seeing things, spirits and stuff like that, and just getting thoughts in my head as to things that were going to happen in the world, and then it would happen. And I was just wondering, why is it so prominent in some people, and in some people, they just have like maybe a slight intuition? I mean, I always considered it to be more of like saints got this type of thing, and I'm certainly no saint.
Well, you were kind of asking why are some people more psychic than others, but the more interesting question I thought, and you're welcome to answer that one, Jeffrey, is why she had this sort of blank period in her ability.
Well, not knowing your history or anything from that standpoint, but usually when people do have experiences early on, they get to a point where they get a little frightened by them and they have a tendency to block them. And then the idea of the fact that you gave birth and you really, made a connection in the fact that you were bringing a new soul or a soul in the world, that could have, taken away some of that fear and taken away some of that, lost element that you had where you went away from it. So the fact is bringing your daughter in and celebrating that beautiful connection of bringing in a very special soul definitely would probably enhance that. Just how you get, probably another example would be when you have twins, how the twins have an uncanny knack to know when the other one's in trouble.
Oh, yes. Have you ever had a psychic blank period?
Only one time when I was going through something physically. I had gotten to a point where I was having an issue with my heart. And what ended up happening was I actually had picked up, I guess, just a lot of negative energy and a lot of, nonsense that had gone on. And I just went through maybe a 3-week period, but it was more because I needed the rest and I needed to kind of recharge my batteries. But not where it was years or anything like that.
Got it. All right, let's go west of the Rockies. You're on the air with Jeffrey Wands. Hi.
Hi, Art.
Howdy.
Hi, it's Kenny P. from New Orleans. How you doing?
Okay, Kenny.
All right, I have a question for you guest, Jeffrey.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Kenny P. Look, I've had numerous encounters with apparitions that the show and I have commonly come to know as shadow people. And I've been plagued by these apparitions for about 15 years now. And I'm trying to find out whether these are perhaps they correlate with a lost one that I lost 15 years ago, and I'm trying to find out if this might be the apparition of someone I lost 15 years ago, or if this is actually some demonic influence.
I didn't get the impression when you said that it was something demonic. I got more of the impression that it would relate more to a loved one that had passed on, that you didn't get closure with, that you didn't get a chance to say goodbye to.
Jeffrey, widening that out a little bit, apparitions or spirits, when you're in contact with a spirit, are there times when you are totally unaware of who it is you're in contact with, or perhaps even a non-human spirit of some sort?
I haven't had anything non-human. I've had, basically animals. I've had people. I haven't had anything alien-like or anything like that. But there are points sometimes where I've had some souls play games with me where they won't exactly tell me who they are, and it usually takes a little while to clarify it. And then I'm able to figure it out. But in some cases, I would think I would be getting a male, it was actually a female. It was just coming across as a male.
How are you able to discern between an animal spirit and a human spirit?
Usually with me because of the fact that it's not so much like I personally think, animals speak, okay, but they don't actually speak in the sense of, the English language in the way that we do. But usually when I am making those connections with animals, they're going to give me like symbols or something that's visual that I can relate to. So I've had a couple of times, I actually had a woman that I sat with one time who had lost her horse, and the horse came through, and the horse would do certain things with his front leg to acknowledge her. And when I was in the session with her, the horse was giving me those symbols, and she knew exactly what I was talking about.
That's amazing. Wildcard line, you're on the air with Jeffrey Wands. Good morning.
Good morning. I would like to know how a person can interpret a clairvoyant dream, one that comes in symbols or metaphors. And I'd also like to know if a person is having clairvoyant dreams, how they can encourage, if there is anything you can do to encourage having more of them.
Okay, excellent question. I'll break it down for you. Now, there's two types of things that happen. There are some people that get dreams that are related to people that have passed on, whether you're getting a visitation. That's one thing, okay, and I call that a visitation. Where the other type dream that you're talking about, if I'm not mistaken, was the idea of getting something like in a prediction form?
Well, she said metaphor. There's how would you interpret some sort of metaphor in a dream?
Well, probably a good example of that would be if you had somebody come through and that person was crying, and it was a loved one. It doesn't necessarily mean in that dream per se that person is upset with you. It could represent something else that's going on in the family or something that's coming up in the family that's not necessarily a nice thing per se, a sickness, a death. So that would be the part of their way of kind of giving you a heads up or a warning. But she was also mentioning like how you would improve on it. And I tell people there are different exercises that you can use in regards to, which I talk about in the book, is just ask for them to clarify something if you don't understand it, and usually they will come through and clarify it. And I always tell people to make sure you keep some sort of little journal by the side of the bed, because I've had it with clients and also in my own situations where you will get certain patterns, maybe 3-4 nights that make no sense, and then when you put them all together, they make sense.
That's right. Jeffrey, and then, of course, you quickly forget dreams if you don't write them down.
Absolutely.
Usually. Jeffrey, there's one other thing. I've had a lot of dream analysts on the show, and I've always been shocked that dreams rarely mean what they seem to mean. Occam's razor just doesn't seem to apply to dreams if you're to believe dream analysts. Usually it means something totally different. Do you agree with that?
In some cases, but probably the classic example, I don't know if you've ever had the dream. I've had the dream where your teeth fall out.
No, that's one I haven't had. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank God. But usually that will represent, in my experiences, illness, death, that type thing. And it doesn't mean for you personally, but it'll represent something in the family. Probably the other element is what I said earlier about the idea of having a dream in a state where you are basically covered in a snowstorm and things of that. You would expect that to mean cold, chilly, but it doesn't mean that. It means wealth and abundance. So I think it's in different forms. But then you get the other dreams where it could be your great-grandmother, Elaine, who passed away, who comes through in the dream and hugs you. Does that mean that she's going to take you? And the answer is no. That's her way of, giving a visitation to let you know that she did get across.
Well, I've never had the teeth falling out dream. However, I do recall having a dream about having earwax, and yes, and in this dream, the doctor was taking a pair of scissors and slowly twisting them into one of my ears to remove the earwax. I found that very disturbing.
I would say it would be. That sounds disturbing. Very much so. I don't know that I would want that done, but I would interpret the ear as meaning for you, like opening up another stage in your life, another channel in your life.
Well, there you go. They never mean what you think they mean. All right, wildcard line. You're on the air with Jeffrey Wands. Hi.
Hi, Art and Jeff.
Hi.
Yes.
Yes, it's wonderful to talk to you. Art, the dead zone in our oceans, a sperm whale washed up on our shore on Wednesday, and I thought
Where are you located, sir?
Pardon me?
Where are you?
Oh, I'm in KEX. I'm in Oregon.
Right. Okay. Well, there is a dead zone off the Oregon coast, but there are now, as I think, about 200 dead zones worldwide, sir, and they're getting gigantic. This is scary stuff. Anyway, go ahead.
Yes, it is. Okay, I have two quick questions. One for you, Art. Very wonderful, strong name for a young man would be Ace. That's what I named my son, and it's been great. And for Jeff, how can one go about to refine one's abilities?
I tell people there's different exercises. I think it's more in being able to learn to focus and do things with concentration. Most people can't sit still more than 3-4 minutes a day. So I describe little exercises that you can do to try to hone that. You could do it through psychometry, which is the idea of taking an object and being able to pick up the vibrations from that particular object. There's all different levels of that you can do, but I usually tell people the first step is learning how to meditate maybe 3-4 minutes a day.
In other words, quiet the mind.
Very much so.
Got it. West of the Rockies, you're on the air with Jeffrey Wands. Hi.
Hi, Art.
Yes.
Thank you so much for taking my call. And Jeffrey, I have a question about suicide. Anyway, my bipolar son, we believe, accidentally took his life 5 years ago. And you had said earlier that people who know what they're doing, you believed in the afterlife, that there may be some sort of, you didn't say punishment, but a consequence for that. My question is, those people with mental illnesses, you said that they would have an easier time transitioning, but you didn't really say if there would be consequences in the afterlife.
With my experiences especially, I'm sorry to hear, especially in regards, with that. But I've come across the majority of the ones that I've dealt with that have had mental illness and have gone through that, there hasn't really been a consequences for them. They've been able to get across very quickly, more so because they're in that state where they don't realize that they're actually doing it because it's the mental illness.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And on top of that, if it was an accident, then it really wasn't suicide.
Exactly.
First-time caller line, you're on the air with Jeffrey Wands. Good morning.
Good morning. Hi, Art. How you doing?
Okay, sir.
Hey, my name is RJ, and I'm from Phoenix, Arizona.
Yes.
My question to Mr. Jeffrey is, I was told that a lot of people are gravitating towards the Arizona area from other places due to its spiritual energy. And my question is, the people that are drawn here to live, that have certain spiritual gifts, are their gifts going to heighten or will heighten?
Well, how about backing up a little bit and asking Jeffrey if there are areas that are indeed more spiritual than others?
Well, that's good. That's good. Yes.
I mean, I've come across certain areas. I've been to Hawaii. I was on the top of Haleakala, and I had a really intense experience. I've had intense experiences in Mexico. I'm actually coming to Phoenix, in a couple weeks for a book signing. So I really can't say to you with Arizona because I haven't experienced it yet, but there are definitely heightened places throughout the world where there are these, I would call them energy vortexes or, connections where there is this deep spiritual energy.
Haleakala, actually. I was... I work there, so I know it quite well. It is a very spiritual place. So there are, you don't know then that one place is necessarily more spiritual than another.
Absolutely not.
Okay. All right. Hold it right there, Jeffrey. We're at the bottom of the hour. It's going so quickly, isn't it? Jeffrey Wands is my guest, and you might want to check out his book. That's always a good way to follow up if you're fascinated. It's called Another Door Opens, and I'm sure you can find it at Amazon.com or your favorite bookstore. From Manila, the Philippines, I'm Art Bell. That's The Highwaymen, folks, and it's all about reincarnation, and we'll just let this roll to its conclusion. My guest is Jeffrey Wands, and regarding reincarnation, it seems to me that if you believe in life after death, then reincarnation, I don't know, just makes all kinds of sense. Well, all right. Coming up in a moment, we're going to look into the psychic in you. Why don't we just go ahead and do that right now? Jeffrey Wands, are you with us?
Yes, I am. I'm here.
Welcome to the program, buddy. How you doing?
Good. Thank you, and congratulations on your happiness coming.
Oh, thank you very much. It was a bit of a surprise, but
well, there's no accidents, so
that's what I'm told, and this definitely was no accident. Anyway, welcome to the program. This is exactly the kind of program I love doing. And the first question here I actually want to ask, which is, what is it? All programs that we do come with pre-programmed questions. I rarely follow them all, but some of them are pretty good. What is a soul map, Jeffrey?
In my experiences, it's basically the plan that we come in with. Probably a good example of this is when we have tragedy and people go through terrible tragedies, and through that tragedy they prevail. Another example would be, which I always use, is like the idea of Bill Gates, who ended up being who he was based on his soul map. And I think that we all come in with that soul potential or soul purpose. And
now there's a big difference. You said soul potential.
Yeah.
Is it only a potential, in your opinion, Jeffrey, or is it actually a map of what's, how your life is going to unwind? In other words, Bill Gates, you mentioned Bill Gates. Yeah. Could Bill Gates have done anything else, or was Bill Gates predestined, to become Bill Gates?
I think in my experiences, I would say to you that Bill Gates was predestined to be Bill Gates. That he came in with, a definitive soul map, and that's what he was supposed to do.
The thing that bothers me about that, Jeffrey, is that that means we're sort of all little marionettes, right? Dancing to a preordained tune.
In some cases, I would agree with you, but there are different elements of the map where I call the GPS changes, because we kind of go through a different, longitude and latitude. And, I use Bill Gates as an example, but there's other examples that I know of and I could think of where people have gone through things that are not on the magnitude of Bill Gates, but end up absolutely fulfilling their soul purpose.
Well, I mentioned in the first hour, I've gone through some of the biggest mountains of happiness and the biggest valleys of tragedy you can possibly imagine. And so I don't know. I often wonder whether that's all preordained and we're supposed to trudge through these, as Ramona told me, and play out the hand we're dealt, or whether free will enters into all of this someplace or another, that old bitch of free will. What do you think?
I think the free will part does come in. I mean, people will ask me, and I talk about it in the book, the idea, which is jumping ahead a little bit, but the idea when you have somebody that all of a sudden goes out in their life and, passes on, was that like a predestined thing? And usually in the experiences I've had, that person will give you an indication or give you an aspect of knowing that it's, it's their time and they're supposed to be going. And I think that's where that part comes in with the soul map.
Okay. Is this a first-time soul, or do you believe in reincarnation, Jeff?
Oh, I absolutely believe in reincarnation.
Absolutely do.
Yes, I do.
I have frequently said and been told by many guests that reincarnation was, at one time, a part of the Bible, and that it was deleted at the Council of Nicaea. Now, is that, as far as you know, true or not?
I don't know. I would say to you that I really believe it's always been there, and I would say to you I would have to agree with that. I think it's part of what's there, and I think, unfortunately, what happens is people want you to believe what they want you to believe, and they're not always open-minded in that sense. And I think that was something that they just couldn't accept. But there's no doubt in my experiences that you see souls, they come in, you can tell who's an old soul, who's a young soul. And a good example is like what you were talking about, what you went through. Okay, there's a reason soul-wise where we go through this.
Give me some sort of further explanation of what you mean by that. There's a reason why we go through these things.
Well, I mean,
is it because of some previous life?
Yes. I mean, I look at it from the point that you went through the tragedy of losing your wife. You went through all these tough experiences, okay? And then you brought all this happiness in now. So it's like you went the full gamut or the full circle to get to that point. So I really believe in my experiences and what I've come to learn through the spirit world is the factor that the spirits play a role in that, and that's where the reincarnation line comes in, and that's where we really learn to understand our potential and our purpose.
Is it your view, and in recent weeks I've had guests on who have, it's always bothered me, Jeffrey, that what in the heck is reincarnation good for if you cannot consciously remember any of the triumphs or mistakes or tragedies from a previous life? But people have said, no, nobody could stand that consciously. It's all in the subconscious. And
absolutely. And I think
you agree with that, huh?
I agree with that because I think it's triggered at different points. It's like a person that would come in that would have alcoholic issues, and all of a sudden they are able to change those issues. Those are a lot of times those things are brought in from other times.
So a person with alcoholic issues in one life is likely to do what in the next? Follow along and once again have the same problem, or the opposite, and not touch alcohol?
In my experiences, usually if it's been there before, it's going to come back again, unless it's conquered and it's dealt with. And that's the part of the reincarnation.
I see. In other words, what you conquer in one life, you don't carry forth to the next.
Exactly. And that's how the soul evolves.
And is it? Many have described it as a school, one from which you eventually graduate.
Yes, I would call it a full-time university.
Full-time university, but graduation is possible.
At one point, absolutely.
And then what?
And then that's where we get into the higher consciousness, and you evolve. And I think that's where we get the idea of the higher being. I mean, it takes a long time. I don't know of anybody on this plane right now that's gotten to that point where they've gotten to that university.
Well, you might not. I mean, maybe they go through a door that we can't get through.
It's quite possible.
Does the soul come in with a specific purpose?
In my experiences, I would say most definitely. I mean, there are no accidents in the things that I've seen from the point that you are guided. I think that you do these little bumps along the way sometimes where you kind of, I don't want to say sabotage yourself, but you stop yourself from reaching where you're supposed to be. I had put examples of things I came across. I had this very well-known actress who constantly, in the beginning, was in her way, and every time she was close to stardom, she would crash. And then finally she achieved where she was supposed to be. But it was a constant struggle from the point, though, anything that could go wrong, did go wrong.
Yeah, there are people, aren't there, who constantly are sabotaging themselves.
And I really believe that's where the soul map comes in, because we have these things that we bring in. You can call them gifts, you can call them abilities, but they are things that are very much, they're prevalent. They play a role.
Is there a way in this current conscious life that we have of taking a look at the soul path, of, in other words, understanding where your life is going to go?
I think it happens on an everyday experience. I think what happens with some people is they may start out in one direction where, I'm trying to think of a good example. Probably a good example is I had a lot of people, unfortunately, that went through the whole 9/11 experience, and living in New York and dealing with some of the families. And I saw, firsthand with some of the people that I dealt with, where their lives were terribly altered by this event. And they were able to, change their total path and, turn it around. One ended up being in public office. One did all this charity stuff and really made a difference. And, all these different things evolved from this, which was a horrible, horrible thing.
Is there any correlation, Jeffrey, between great success and great tragedy? And I'm almost asking this from a personal perspective, because I
absolutely think so. And I think what will happen sometimes is that's where we get into the idea of what you're working out before, where you get these people that go through these horrible, horrible things in this lifetime, and then they're able to overcome it and, get to a higher level as far as success. And if you look at most, I would say, successful people or people that I've come in contact with who have changed their life through tragedy. I mean, I'll never forget this. I had this lovely woman who lost 3 sons. And on top of that, when I talk about a triple whammy, she lost most of her family in the Holocaust.
Oh, my God.
And, I mean, I would know, you know what it's like. You have kids. And to go through an experience to even think about losing 3 kids. And she lost 3 kids in a row. They were all, unfortunately, hemophiliacs. And that was before they tested blood. And they all ended up dying, from being HIV.
Oh my God!
And then
I
she
can't
lost
even
5
imagine.
family members in the Holocaust on top of that. So if that doesn't get you, I don't know. Losing the kids would definitely put the topper on it.
Okay, well, here's an obvious question, and that is, these tragedies, these horrible things that come along in the middle of a good life and just absolutely bring an axe down in the middle of your life, is there any way, in your opinion, to alter the probability of these things or change the probability of these things from happening?
I think that's part of the soul map that has to take place. I mean, I've had it with people. I'll give you an instance. Recently I had 2 clients come, and the gentleman was sitting in front of me, and I said to him, your dad is standing behind you. He's referencing something with the heart, and he's showing me something with your valve. I would really go have it checked. And he poo-pooed it, and, of course, being skeptical, and, I find it to be with a lot of men, and I find it to be with most people, because it's more if you can't see it or you can't feel it, it doesn't exist. And I said to him, look, I'll make you a bet. Why don't you go and, to your doctor and have him give you a test? And sure enough, he had a major heart valve that had to be replaced.
Oh, my God.
So, I mean, that would be something like I would use as, as far as altering tragedy, because the doctor said to him that if he didn't go, he would have, passed in, who knows, maybe 3 weeks, a month, 2 months, whatever. So that would be an example.
Okay, so obviously then you are psychic.
Most days.
Most days?
Yes.
How did you find this psychic ability in yourself, Jeffrey?
It actually started, it was kind of comical. I was probably about 6 years old at the time, and I had gotten in trouble. And I was looking at my mom, and I remember sitting in the room, and I was in the living room. And my mother was like going into this whole thing about what I did and what I shouldn't have done. And I looked at my mother very candidly and said to my mother, by the way, your grandmother is standing in the room, and she's telling me you did this, this, and this when you were my age. Why are you punishing me? You didn't get punished. And she just looked at me like with a real profound look, and kind of looked at me and just ignored it. And I ended up getting in trouble. It didn't do me any good, but that was like the instance where it started. And all through childhood, I had all these different instances where, you talk about imaginary friends. Well, I didn't really have imaginary friends. I had.
All right. I'm going to ask a couple of stupid questions, Jeffrey. For one, when you saw your grandmother, was she as much in the flesh and blood as everybody else in the room? Was she somewhat translucent? Was she just something that occurred in your mind? In other words,
what form?
How do you see these people, these dead people?
When I saw her, she was coming through where she was translucent, where I could see her in the room and I could look through her. I've had other instances where we've had where I'll see a full apparition, where I will actually see a person in full form.
I would think, you said you were 6?
Yeah.
I would think that would just scare the hell out of a 6-year-old.
It didn't, because she was very friendly, and she was like trying to calm me because I was about to get killed for doing what I was doing at that time.
Huh. So that's how it began, and it's been this way all your life?
Yeah, and I had instances. I'll tell you a funny instance. I remember when I was about 11, my next-door neighbor at the time was a huge, huge car enthusiast. And I remember standing outside with him, and he was working on the car, and I looked at him, and I'm like, there's something wrong with your transmission. And he looked at me, he's like, what are you talking about? And sure enough, like 3 days later, his whole transmission blew. And he thought I did something to it. And I remember him knocking on the door, yelling at me. And I had like little instances of that, growing up.
Well, I've always wondered about that. Psychics, for example, frequently work with police departments, and police departments rarely admit it, although sometimes, that they will call a psychic at a desperate moment in a case that they're trying to solve. And I've always wondered, if a psychic goes to the police with some information that turns out to be true, doesn't that psychic run the risk of being accused of being part of the crime?
Absolutely. I'll give you a funny story with that. I was working on an arson case, and I must have been at the time, probably going back about 15 years ago, and I was sitting with this family, and the family had hired me and wanted me to come in to help on this case, and I met with the detective. It was an old, kind of staunchy Irish detective, and he looks at me, and he, hands me an envelope, and he goes, here, this is a clue for the case, and I hand it back to him, and I'm like, this is your shopping list. Make sure you get the bread, the eggs, and the butter your wife wants. And, you deal with stuff like that. But I remember, by the time we had gotten done with this, it ended up being the fact that the person that actually asked me to get involved with this was the person that ended up being the person who caused the fire.
And at what point did you realize that?
Right when I started sitting with the person, it started to unfold. So it ended up being that the detective was like, I was given the detective information on how he did it.
Wow. Are you following this series on television about the psychic in Arizona?
Yes, the medium.
Yes, medium, I'm sorry.
Yes.
And what's the difference, by the way, between a medium and a psychic, if any?
I don't think there is a difference in my experience. I mean, I do get both ends of it. I get these profound psychic events that take place, and then I do deal with, the dead people, so it's a mix. But it is kind of funny because at times I could totally relate to what goes on, in that show because it's very typical of my life.
I have been dying to interview Ms. Dubois, and who knows, maybe we'll get that opportunity, maybe not, but you sound an awful lot like her in many ways. So you do identify with a lot of what you see there.
Yeah, I would say the funniest thing that I ever saw on that show was the fact, I think it was an early episode, where she was working, I guess, with the Texas Rangers on a case.
That's right.
And she misses the hurricane.
Oh, that's right.
And, I always tell people all the time, that's the human element of what we do, because our emotions sometimes block the most obvious event. Like, she could pick out the fact of, who the person was who killed who, and in relationship to that, miss the most important thing, the fact that you got a hurricane coming.
Sure. So, I've not heard the term before, soul map. This is sort of a new one on me.
Well,
Where did that come from?
something I came up with, yeah.
Ah, that's why I've not heard about it. You came up with it, okay.
Well, I'm sure it's been out there, but it's just something that impressed me, which I consider to be a very good term to use for people's purposes.
Okay, when you look at somebody, or consult with somebody, can you literally see that soul map laid out, without regard for time? In other words, can you look into their past as well as their present and future?
At points, I will get glimpses of what I consider to be past lives where there's been issues that will tie into either relationships per se. Like, I had a woman that I worked with who had a horrible, horrible relationship with her dad. She was sexually molested by the father. All these terrible things that went on, and we were able to see from where that came from. And I actually talk about in the book how I work with different therapists. So basically, depending on the situation with her, I worked with the therapist to help her have closure because the father ended up passing, and she had all this residual anger, and it had come just not from this lifetime, it had come from before.
Okay. Jeffrey Wands, hold tight. We're at the bottom of the hour. Jeffrey Wands is my guest, and he's obviously a psychic. Tragedy. It's a part of many, many of our lives, all right? And how it affects our souls, and if you will, our soul maps, I find that absolutely fascinating. Success and tragedy, they seem to go hand in hand. From Manila, I'm Art Bell. Yes, indeed, here I am. Data Dude, that's the name he gives himself, from Houston, Texas, says, "Hey, Art, with your announcement of the new addition to the family tonight, I cannot help but remember something to that effect having been predicted on your predictions for 2006 show at the end of last year. Better keep track of that guy. Congrats." Oh, Data Dude, my God, I seem to remember it too. I remember that. Oh, God. The predictions from last year's New Year's Eve show, and the couple of days prior to or so, we always do predictions between Christmas and New Year. By the way, I'll be doing it this year, too. Didn't make it to the Philippines. They're still back in America somewhere. However, I understand they're listening to that program and documenting them for me, so we will have them this year, and I really do remember something like that. Anyway, Jeffrey, I've got more to say about tragedy, a lot more to say about tragedy, and I suspect Jeffrey will have a response to it in a moment. How cool is this? Somebody calling themselves LJ from Pahrump, Nevada. That's my hometown, as you all know. And no doubt, a listener to KNYE FM 95.1 asks two really good questions, Jeffrey, and they are: does our talking to our past loved ones prevent them from incarnating and reincarnating, I guess I had to say, and when they incarnate, does that cut off our communication with them?
It definitely doesn't hurt them in regards to the fact that we're not stopping them by speaking to them. And once they do reincarnate, yes, we don't hear them anymore.
Ah. Oh, well, you mentioned that there was usually a lot of time that passes before they reincarnate or before anybody reincarnates, although I suppose that's not an ironclad rule. What do we know about the rules? But have you ever run into an instance where you tried to communicate to somebody and could not because, in fact, they reincarnated?
Twice.
No kidding.
I had one woman who had lost her sister very, very young. And what had happened was when this woman had her first child, the sister came back in.
Wow, that's a wow. All right, let's go to the international line. You're on the air with Jeffrey Wands. Hello.
Hello, Art. Hello, Jeff.
Hey.
Yes, good morning to you both. I'm going to say a big good morning because I don't know what time it is in Manila or where you are, Jeff.
Well, it doesn't. Where are you, Jeff? I don't even know where you are.
I'm in New York. So
you're in New York. That's right. I'm in Manila. In Manila, it's about 4:41 or so in the afternoon. But it doesn't matter. Go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, just a little ditty before I ask the question. When I was 15, I'm 37 years old right now. When I was 15, I went to visit my father in New York, and he took me to the World Trade Centers, and we did go to the observation deck, but when I was standing in front of it, looking up at it and going, wow, this thing is really, really tall, he was telling me about some sway factor of buildings that it has because of wind and earthquakes and whatnot. And I thought to myself at that moment, wow, imagine if this thing tipped over and it crashed in on New York. And it's, for me, it's just a coincidence that I would think something like that at the time, but I did think it, and I'll always remember thinking it. And it was a beautiful sight looking from the observation deck and just looking out across New York. My question for you, Jeff, is do you think that thought itself is manifested as a perceivable frequency or vibration like throwing a stone in a lake, which can be used by everyone to predict the future depending on their level of knowingness? And my second question is for you both.
Oh, that's a big one. Jeff?
Sorry. I didn't know that would be too much for you. Go ahead,
Jeff.
Well, I was going to say to you, you said how old were you when you were there?
15.
So I always find to be that when you're dealing with younger people and you're dealing with the so-called psychic world, there are these, what we say, there's less guards up from that point. And it's quite possible that your consciousness or your psychic side was picking up on the fact that that could happen and it was going to happen. So I would have to agree with you from the point of throwing the rock in the pond that that would be part of that ability to pick up things.
On any time stream.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, my second question is really short and sweet. It's about The Secret. Do you guys know what The Secret is?
No.
No, I guess we don't. Huh?
I just, you know what? I think everybody truly knows, but I just watched a documentary on it, which explains it further, and it's actually the law of attraction of the universe, which what you think is what is manifested in your life. It becomes. So if you're a negative person, you're going to draw negative
I see.
things in your life. If you're a positive person, you're going to stay positive, but that is the secret.
I suppose that's a kind of a general truth. What do you think, Jeffrey?
I agree. I actually write about that in the book. I mean, you do have people that walk around waiting for a building to fall on them that are, what we call the space grabbers or the negative ones, and they're the ones that, are always the ones that say, I don't have luck, I don't have this, and they are manifesting that bad energy.
The world has said, what happened to all the psychics with regard to 9/11, which was one of the biggest things that's happened in our lifetimes without any question, Jeffrey. What happened to all the psychics? Well, as a matter of fact, a couple of gals called the Psychic Twins did, on my program, predict the Twin Towers falling, the act of terrorism against the Twin Towers. And I don't know of many others that are documented. Do you?
I had heard some. I remember at the time I was doing a Sunday night radio show, and we had people on, and I remember a couple of people saying that they had picked up on that so-called consciousness of, a terrorism act or, not necessarily the World Trade Center, but per se planes coming into a large building. So
Was this prior to the event or
yeah,
after?
prior to the event, yes.
Prior to the event.
But I do remember I actually heard that show with the twins on.
Oh, you did?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, it's true enough, and it's the only one that I'm actually aware of. West of the Rockies, you're on the air with Jeffrey Wands. Hello.
Hi, how you doing?
Okay, sir.
Okay, I have a question about, you're saying that, you can be punished for killing yourself. My question is...
Actually, I don't think he said that.
Oh, okay, maybe I phrased that wrong, but I'm wondering if you feel like you're living a life that's the result of possibly killing yourself in a past life, if you were to do it again, would you keep treading water, or would you not move forward? Because I felt...
Oh, I'm sorry. I cut him off early, but we got the question anyway.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't say that you were being punished, for that. But, I mean, in my experiences from that standpoint, it's quite possible for people that have done it before to, kind of be suicidal in this lifetime. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to manifest it again, but they would definitely have those tendencies, and they would bring stuff in. It could be done through alcohol. It could be done through the fact that they develop a mental illness or go through that process of, being open to that. So,
all right. First time caller line, your turn with Jeffrey Wands. Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Art. This is Bob calling from Rochester, New York.
Yes, Bob.
Yes, my question for Jeff is, I'm a 47-year-old male, and I suffer from manic depression, obsessive compulsive disorder, and I also am a recovering drug addict. And in my past, I've been abused when I was younger, and I have abused others in my lifetime. My question is, with all this guilt and torment that I still have and a lot of anger, what could possibly happen to my soul beyond the realms of death?
Well, I mean, I would say to you, just based on my experiences from that point, I mean, it would be repeating again. I mean, it sounds, and I really feel for you that you'd be going through all these things. But in that aspect, if you've moved towards turning your life around and you've moved towards, working through that, you've already been through hell and back.
Yeah, I certainly sympathize with that person very much so. Wildcard line, you're on the air with Jeffrey Wands. Hello.
Am I talking?
You're talking, yes.
Oh, yes. Hi. Hi, Art.
Yes.
This is Judy from Madison Heights, Michigan. Hi. And I have a question for Jeff. How to deal with an out-of-body experience I've had. It was a three-way, meaning I was watching myself watch myself die, and after that, I have been able to see through mirrors, like three-way, like around. And I thought maybe everyone could, so I thought everyone's lying to me. And on the floor, I see also there's images of lions, and it's just not my imagination, because when I go to my friend's house, they see lions, they see images of, and they don't want to speak with me or come around me because these things happen. My paintings, things change. It's not normal. I don't know what to do with. I can go on and on with a book about what's going on with me, but I just don't know how to deal with these voices and that come over my telephone when I'm recording something, and they'll go, "Oh God, not again," because they say in these voices, "Don't smoke, don't drink, read the Bible." So just the other day, I'll give it to my friend, and my friend will say, "I don't want to hear it no more, Judy. Don't bring the ghosts here, because when I come to their house, things happen. Doors slam, lights go out, and they're afraid. I'm not."
In other words, you live in a completely psychic kind of happening world. Jeffrey, I wonder how many people are in our mental institutions across America who hear voices, who are experiencing psychic phenomena and have been diagnosed as mentally ill as a result of that and are not necessarily so.
Oh, I think there's plenty. I mean, I did, part of my degree was in hospital administration. And when I was in college, I actually did an internship in a mental hospital. And you can tell from that standpoint that some of these people are misdiagnosed. And, also I find it to be, you get some of the kids that have trouble with focusing. They are very much receptors. They are very much picking up different energies, which is causing some of the problems with the attention deficit.
Right. Exactly right. All right. West of the Rockies, you're on the air with Jeffrey Wands. Hello.
Hi. Good morning. I was just wondering if our grief for our loved ones that have died can keep them enmeshed here.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I tell people it's so important. Before you even get to anyone like myself, you have to go through a grief process. And until you've gone through that loss, I mean, the one great thing that I think that's really happened in the last, 20 years or so, you have so many opportunities to go to groups. There are, Forever Family. There are groups from hospitals and local organizations that help you deal with the grief process. And I tell people you have to go through an element of either talking to your priest or your rabbi or a counselor before you even get to that point, because that will hold the departed ones up.
Well, will our, I guess the intensity of our grief for them make it worse?
Not necessarily. It's the level of the grief, which is, in most cases, if you look, when you do lose somebody, we kind of make it about us. We don't make it about the person that's passed.
Yeah.
Because we're angry that we lost mom or we lost, that element. And that's what makes it so difficult. So it's a process, because usually it'll be the fact that, I didn't get to the hospital in time, or, she died in her sleep and I didn't get a chance to say goodbye, or, I get a lot of stuff with people where it's survivor's guilt, and I had a lot of that from 9/11 with, firefighters that went into, the tower that worked for other firefighters, and the firefighters that were off, why didn't they die that day? You get into a whole thing, and that's where you hold up that whole grief process.
I see. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, thank you very much for the call. It was actually a very good one. Let's move to, the wild card line in Florida. John, you're on the air.
Yes. A lot of people I know get upset about the Catholic and I guess other Christian churches teaching on suicide. I don't know, though, if they're familiar with all of it, in that Catholic Church at least teaches that if a person's really genuinely crazy, like your guest was saying, they don't know what it is they're doing. Mm-hmm. That the reason suicide is wrong is because it's wrong to murder somebody, even yourself. Mm-hmm. And that if either you're crazy and don't know what you're doing, or if you're unaware that it's a sin, like the lady who just was so concerned about her family and the fact that her illness was bankrupting her family. Well, her motivation wasn't, I don't like the situation I'm in, so I'm going to kill myself in order to leave. Her motive was altruistic. May not have been the wisest thing to do or whatever, but it wasn't a selfish or sinful motivation, in that in those cases, the Catholic Church teaches that if you're either ignorant it's a sin or just too crazy to know what you're doing, then you would not go to hell because you're not committing a sin. And it sounds like that meshes. Of course, Christian churches generally, including Catholic, don't teach reincarnation, but it sounds like, other than that,
John, let's try another question with Jeffrey. You said hell. Is there, in your opinion, Jeffrey, is there hell?
I think there's a form of hell in the spirit world, which is the area of where the soul gets caught between this world and the afterlife. And
that makes this question valid then.
Yeah. So I think that's where it comes. But I try not to, religion is a very personal thing. And you have to kind of go beyond the box sometimes, and I think people don't do that because, we're taught one belief system, if it's Catholicism or Judaism, mm-hmm. and we don't look at the bigger picture, which is the idea of the fact, like what I was talking about before with the woman who had the ALS, who decided to do that. But in essence, that was a kindly act because of the fact that she was trying to help her family. She wasn't doing it, with the intent to hurt anybody. She was doing it because it was destroying her family.
Yeah, but the teaching of the church, as the caller I think was saying, is not exactly elastic about this. It says suicide is murder and you go to hell.
Agreed, but that's unfortunately written, and you're supposed to believe what the church is telling you.
Anything else, caller?
Well, actually, what I think you may have misunderstood. The church's teaching is more elastic than most people realize. If you are not aware of what you're doing, then it's not a sin and you don't go to hell, either because you're crazy or because you're ignorant and just trying to do something kindly, like the woman with ALS.
Okay, I'm just not familiar with that teaching. Where is that written?
If you look in the catechism.
Okay. I guess I haven't.
I haven't either, but
I've never heard that before, so that's a new one on me.
Well, see, a lot of people will point out the teaching, but the thing is, they don't study it more. And for people, I suppose on the one hand, if this encourages somebody to commit suicide, it's a bad thing for me to mention it. But a lot of people out there experience a lot of grief and fear after a loved one dies. That does not necessarily apply. And so that's why I thought I should mention it, especially since it sounds like that's very much what you found when you've been communicating with people who have died.
Very much,
the one who did it out of spite.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, it does sound like that's exactly what Jeffrey's found.
Very much so. And I was just actually, when you were saying that, I was just thinking of another instance that I had. I had a elderly gentleman that was married to his wife for 62 years. He went out to get milk, and the wife had a massive heart attack and died. And he had this terrible grief process with this because he wasn't there, and he thought he could call the ambulance, and he ended up taking his own life in the garage, from the point of starting the car and letting the carbon monoxide get to him.
Sure.
And the family was extremely upset. They were very Catholic, and they were extremely upset because he killed himself that he wasn't going to get there. And, that's a perfect example, like what your caller was saying about how you interpret, what's written.
All right, listen, we're at the end of this episode, Jeffrey. Another Door Opens is your book. How long has it been out now?
It's just been out actually about 3 weeks.
All right, well, let's hope this kicks it right in the tail end, and it does really well. If you're interested in what Jeffrey's had to say tonight, you want to follow up on it, Another Door Opens is his book, and I suppose that door is available on Amazon.com, right?
Yes, it is.
All right. There you go. Jeffrey, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the air. It's been a wonderful show. Thank you, my friend, and we'll do it again sometime.
And thank you, and good luck with your new edition.
Thank you, Jeffrey. All right, folks, that's it. What a wonderful show it's been. I will see you tomorrow night. It's going to be a very interesting night with Dr. Doug Beeson and America's directed energy weapons. From Manila in the Philippines, I'm Art Bell. Night-night.